You better be listening to Sleazoids or I must break you.
Go to them. That hurt is still outside. Go away. Go away!
It's going away, old chap. With me.
You shouldn't accept rides from strangers. They take you to a foreign country.
I know, but I'm late.
Never hear from them again. There ought to be a law against them.
Wish me luck. I'm gonna make a noise in the world.
My soul runs naked with the wind.
Money, come on, man.
Get lost, go find your Amazon.
Mr. and Mrs. Finley are here.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on. Invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, we can't trust anyone, not your mom, not your friends, not even your dog. And you can find out what I'm talking about at the end of this episode. So join that sleaze.
That's right. We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we have been doing for 6+ years. Yep. And so there's like 160, I think, plus bonus episodes, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre films throughout the entire year, which there are 50 plus of. So there's over 200 bonus episodes over at sleazoidspodcast.com for anyone who's interested. And also obviously patreon.com/sleazoidspodcast. And speaking of which, we are going to give those folks their shout outs here. We had a McCooligan sign up at $5 a month. We had Abijah Ahern. We had Craig Crimson, Andra Lipka, Skiz, Daryl Bowen, Josh, a fellow Josh. We had Oates. We had Herman Meadle, Henry Ermer, who actually signed up at the annual tier because there's a bit of a discounted rate per month if you sign up for an entire year of the show in advance. So Henry Ermer did that, and also Ed Berberick did that as well. So thanks to both of you folks. We also had Patrick Williams sign up, Jim Bung, Devin Connor, David Jones, and last but not least, Aiden Kropp. So thanks so much to all of you folks. We appreciate the support and hope you're enjoying all those bonus episodes.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, that is the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you are listening to us on either one of those platforms, and I can see the stats, I can see you right now listening on both those platforms, give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the very last plug, as always, is merch. If you like the poster art that based out of Toronto horror artist Trevor Henderson did for our show, you can get that put on basically anything that you can think of. And you freaks have thought of a lot of stuff. You have bought notebooks, you have bought pillows, hoodies, coffee mugs. If you're interested in that, the link is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com. But that is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me also, as always, is my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks would have heard from us over here on the main feed, where we would have been joined by special guest film critics Willow Caitlin McClay and Caden Mark Gartner to discuss a double feature of movies starring the Italian transgender actress Ava Robbins, which was a pairing inspired by their excellent new book on the history of transness in cinema, Corpses, Fools, and Monsters. And it was actually a section of the book they regretfully had to cut. And we're very excited to be like, we have kind of like a bonus chapter on our show, which is kind of, they described it to us. And so we talked about a softcore sexploitation crime superhero hangout movie, all of those things in one, called Ava Man from 1980, where Ava Robbins got to show off her star power by dancing to disco songs and seducing almost every character in the movie into a softcore sex scene. And we paired that with Dario Argento's very playfully grisly, self-reflexive, and also fairly disco-heavy return to the giallo genre in Tenebrae from 1982, which people might not know, but the trans actress Ava Robbins, she plays a very important role in that movie as the girl in the traumatic flashback who sexually humiliates the horror author turned killer, turning him into the misogynistic killer by stepping on him with her red heels. And the character she's stepping on is like meant to be a metaphor for Argento. Yeah. So there was lots of psychosexual analysis being done by Willow, Caden, and us 2 weeks ago for anyone interested if you haven't caught up yet.
Yeah. It's and both pretty incredible. I mean, and Eva Man is just such a uniquely strange porno film that I don't think I'd ever get the chance to see. I mean, it was like less than 100 on Letterboxd, I think, logged that thing. So we love any time something that rare comes onto the show. It's always hard to find, but it's always a treat. And
yeah, the rare non-Will Sloan porn episode of the show.
Yeah, true. Broke the pattern a little bit. Yeah,
that's right.
But yeah, great stuff.
Yeah. And then last week over on the Patreon feed, due to the bizarre result of once again everyone having Jan Dubont fever, the legendary Die Hard and Basic Instinct cinematographer turned director, based on a recent legacy sequel to his 1996 disaster movie / rom-com Twister. Which I did think it's funny. The new one's just called Twisters. They did the Aliens thing where they added the S and put the money sign through, and you know what? It fucking worked. Everyone went to see it. Everyone fucking has Twister fever right now. It's making bank.
Huge. Oh, I didn't know. I wasn't looking. I didn't look it up, and I haven't seen it yet. So that's interesting. But yeah. I'm curious if they're gonna keep the like super melodramatic romance of the first one, or if they're just gonna lock into the action stuff of the Twister destroying everything. I'm interested.
We're gonna have to find out later, but we did pair that. We went back and talked about the original Twister last week over on the Patreon, and we decided what else can go with Twister, but another very ridiculously scripted and impressively made 90s spectacle thriller that went on to become a summer box office smash and an afternoon cable staple, also directed by Jan Dubont. That movie was Speed from 1994, starring our boy Keanu, and definitely the movie between the two that we felt suited his like analog action stunt sensibility that he had.
Yeah, and it's not. I mean, both of the movies are incredibly silly, of course, but Speed just delivers it to you in such a satisfying and genuine way. Like you actually believe in its stupidity. all the dumb logic that's built into the world is completely like you just buy into it, and it's incredible directing, and the stunt work too is awesome. They do have a lot of the actors actually doing some of the stunt work, so it's very cool to see, and a lot of great authentic action cinematography in it too. Like the way that he just basically he has that bus running on an actual freeway the entire time he's filming. It's never green screened or anything like that.
And
it
Dennis Hopper screaming crazy one-liners at him the whole time.
It's so fun.
Wonderful vibe. So if you haven't heard that episode, that was last week over on the Patreon. Go back and go check it out. But moving on to this week, we are joined by a first-time guest that we've been meaning to have on for a bit. I'm hoping I'm getting this intro right, because I realize most of the time I talk to the guest beforehand and I actually get this right. So I totally wrote this out and was like, whoops, forgot to get this approved. But based on what I know about her from Twitter, she's very into wrestling. She's very into photography. She is very into research. I believe she's a librarian, and she is the maker of a wonderful top 10 by year movie zine that I cannot recommend enough. That guest is Katie Stebbins. Katie, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Did I mess that intro up? Is there anything I should have had in there? I realized I should have talked to you about that.
No. I'm glad you didn't, because like I never know what to say. So I think what you said was perfect. I have no notes.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, I wanted to get the specifically the film zine in there the most, because I have a feeling that what you've brought with you this week was kind of born a little bit from doing the film zine, because I know you did do a 1965 one, and both of these films are from 1965. So Katie, if you want to walk us through maybe what the two films are that we're going to be talking about today and how you came to pair them together.
Yeah, so the two films that I chose to talk about are Inside Daisy Clover, which is directed by Robert Mulligan and produced by Alan Pakula, and Rat Fink, which is a film directed by James Landis that, was thought lost for 50 years. So it's sort of a recent discovery. I picked them because they were films that I had sort of seen when I was watching a ton of stuff that had come out in 1965. And they were two films that really jumped out at me when I watched them. They are both about sort of rises to fame, different rises to fame within Hollywood and the entertainment industry. One of them, Inside Daisy Clover, flopped commercially and critically. The other, as I said, was lost for like half a century. They're both super metatextual with regards to Hollywood and their respective lead actors. Shuler, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but Shuler Hayden, who was the star of the film Rat Fink. This was sort of his self-produced vanity project, and he's playing a guy who gets famous, and he's using this film to try to get famous, and he didn't get famous. And then Natalie Wood's entire life is sort of reflected back at her in Inside Daisy Clover, and it's a film that meant a lot to her. They're both super, super interesting, the way that they are engaging with fame and with their respective industries. One of them is more music-oriented, although Daisy Clover's whole thing is that she can sing. And Inside Daisy Clover is sort of just this really ambitious gamble, I find, that's really trying to alienate its audience and using the sort of look and feel of its A-picture status to sort of depict its own industry as a very predatory and almost like Faustian ghost town that completely evaporates your entire identity and sense of humanity. And I've never really seen another film depict fame the way that one does. And then, Rat Fink kind of hits this really sweet spot for me where it's very mean. It's a very mean piece of sort of B-movie genre fare, but there's something a bit more artful and considered about it within the exploitation elements. So there's just a lot going on in both of those films, and they both really
I didn't realize until I watched them both. I was like, oh, these are actually both rags to riches, like industry stardom, sort of melodramas in a way. But both of them were, they were updated with that incoming new Hollywood idea of like, we're going to be pretty frank about all of this material. Like, there's melodramas brought up ideas of abuse and exploitation and addiction, and these two throw in statutory rape as well. And, they both, I think, just take like really, really bleak tonal attitudes about the subject matter in a way that maybe the more classical versions of the same material wouldn't. And it's a neat pairing.
And I like having two different perspectives on the lead characters. Like with Rat Fink, it's more like he has this strange understanding of what it requires to get to the top, and he's willing to just do it completely sadistically. Whereas
money mindset hustler versus like exploited innocence.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Whereas Natalie Wood is kind of just taking it in and learning as she gets deeper and deeper into the industry. So it is really cool to see both sides there too.
Yeah, so we are going to get real dark and real into the muck of Hollywood this week. So let's kick things off here. Let's start with Inside Daisy Clover.
Join her in the greatest put down on the whole payoff world since movies.
All right, we are talking Inside Daisy Clover, the 1965 American dark rags to riches showbiz melodrama directed by Robert Mulligan, written by Gavin Lambert, adapted from his own 1963 novel, and starring Natalie Wood as Daisy Clover, a poor country tomboy with dreams of Hollywood acting stardom, who ends up getting absorbed into the industry and dealing with all kinds of interesting characters, a matinee idol played by Robert Redford, who has a little bit of his own sort of demons that he's wrestling with, and a very, very evil vibes studio executive played by Christopher Plummer. Also a pretty cool henchman role by Roddy McDowall as well, another child star turned actor prior to Planet of the Apes, when he would really take off. But this is our first, I believe, actually, this is our first time talking about Robert Mulligan. So I feel like that's kind of the place to start. I did not realize that until I started being like, oh shit, yeah, I guess, the idea of doing the kind of dramas that he did is not something everyone brings on the show, but he had a very interesting trajectory to becoming a filmmaker that involved being a sort of U.S. Navy radio operator, and then being part of the New York Times editorial staff, and then a CBS messenger boy before eventually becoming a TV show director and getting a studio deal that allowed him to do some, to transfer his skills over to Hollywood a bit. He did some Tony Curtis movies. He did some Rock Hudson movies, including like Come September and Rat Race. He did apparently a baseball movie starring a pre-Psycho Anthony Perkins called Fear Strikes Out that I immediately watch listed because I was like, what is that?
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
It sounds awesome. And anyway, doing these is how he eventually met legendary director in his own right, Alan J. Pakula, who had yet to become the legendary 70s thriller director of All the President's Men and Clute and Parallax View that we know him as now, and was instead at this time working as a producer, trying to get these very sensitive and socially and politically conscious dramas made that he felt his friend Mulligan had the credentials and sort of star studio contracts to actually get made, which they did quite famously together in a little movie called To Kill a Mockingbird, starring Gregory Peck as obviously Harper Lee's Pulitzer Prize winning Alabama lawyer, Mr. Atticus Finch, and which went on to become such a hit for the two of them, and securing Mulligan an Oscar nomination for directing so early on in his career that they went on an insane run of movies that included Steve McQueen starring Baby, The Rain Must Fall, which was like all about generational abuse and alcoholism, and then Love with a Proper Stranger, which was more of like a New York City kitchen sink kind of thing, which was McQueen and Natalie Wood as Italian Americans who have like a one night stand and then have to pursue a back alley abortion. And which went on to generate like 5 more Oscar nominations for them. And it was Natalie Wood's third at that point because she had already done Rebel Without a Cause and Splendor in the Grass. So it was, these guys were like on top of the world when they made Inside Daisy Clover, is I think what I wanted to get at here. And it was partially what I don't know if they wanted to burn it down or if they wanted to use it to be like, we're going to do something a little bit more confrontational, but they were attracted to this novel by Gavin Lambert, which fell on their desk, who is a queer British writer and editor of Sight and Sound, who was someone who was very interested in writing more social realist stories, which makes the style of this very interesting because I would not call it that, but the material is it. And it's, as Katie kind of mentioned, it feels like it kind of rubs up against the fact that they're making like a lavish Hollywood backlot kind of thing, but the writing feels like coming from a guy who wants to do some dark social realist elements. And he was also apparently a co-writer and apparently maybe even lover of Nicholas Ray for a time, doing an uncredited write on Bigger Than Life with James Mason as the abusive cortisone addicted father who blows up his nuclear family household, which if anyone has not seen that, oh my God, I cannot recommend that enough. That is actually a good follow-up to Inside Daisy Clover. It's a devastating movie.
Honestly, this is the first time that I've seen a Robert Mulligan movie. I still haven't seen To Kill a Mockingbird somehow.
You did not have to watch that in high school?
Class. That's what I'm saying. I don't know how I missed that, or maybe I was sick that day. I do not know. But yeah, I've just never gotten around to it, and I feel kind of shamed by that. But yeah, so it is interesting that this will be my first Mulligan film, just given its reputation, I guess, when it came out, which was kind of a mixed bag, unfortunately. But because
it did not get them the 5 Oscar nominations they were getting previously, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think it was recognized later on. I don't know how recently, but I do think that there is a lot in this thing that is pretty incredible. I think it looks great, which makes sense given that Charles Lang is the cinematographer. That definitely helps because we discussed him with Ace in the Hole, I believe it was. Oh, and The Big Heat.
And the big, yeah, dude. And also he shot Anthony Mann movies too. Like this is one of the rare cinematographers who was like amazing at doing classical black and white and doing like color stuff, like Technicolor. Because the westerns he did for Anthony Mann, and I think he did some like It Hot for Billy Wilder as well, which looks great. And this guy was around since like the 1930s. He was doing like Marlene Dietrich movies and stuff. So like here's a guy who saw the classical era of Hollywood and followed it all the way into the 1960s, where some of his last movies were like Charade and Magnificent Seven and stuff like that. So he makes a lot of sense for a beautiful widescreen Technicolor musical that they were trying to make in the 1960s, when they were like, yeah, but this material is going to be way darker, which is definitely part of the whiplash effect the movie had. Some of it, I think, is used very productively. Some of it still has a little bit of a weird effect on me as like a first time watch. But Katie, I'm curious with your experience with this. The first time you watched it, where you're just like, you were blown away. You were like, this is, what's going on here?
So like the first 10 minutes, I was like, I don't know. Like, we're like in this, it's like she's, I mean, we can get into a lot of this film is about a whiplash effect, I find, like in ways that I just will, I feel like I will always sort of be grappling with. With Natalie Wood, right away, she's, you hear her in voiceover. We learn that she is 15. She's supposed to be 15. She is 27. It's that already right off the bat. We're like, okay, what are we doing? And, she's like this street rat tomboy. She's writing graffiti in her own little sort of back of a building area that she's got all sorts of scrawls of things like "My sister's a pile of garbage" and all this other stuff. And, her mom is Ruth Gordon, who's, Ruth Gordon's extremely eccentric. She calls her mom old chap all the time. And I'm just like, okay, we're getting a little too cute. I don't know about this. And then, by like, I don't know, 90 minutes later, you're just like, oh my God, like, where did that girl go?
Yeah.
And, you end up kind of just wanting so desperately for her to find, herself again in a way that makes you miss the things that like are sort of like feeling a bit too whimsical to me at the beginning. I find that you get so far away from that that it is you just sort of yearn for it. Especially there's so much about people, the characters losing their voices, and with the mother as well, sort of not losing her voice as well. But like but beyond that, like the first time I saw it, as I sort of got into it, I was. It really snuck up on me, and I, about an hour in, I kind of was just like, "Oh, this is like a horror movie to me." Like, I'm like, "What? Why am I feeling this way?" Like, I feel. Oh my God, the
music! I'll say
the music.
It's almost like a gothic horror score or something at certain times. It's so different than what like the movie looks like, which is cool, because that's what I mean. Like sometimes I feel like the whiplash is super, super deliberate, and then there's other times where you're like, "Oh, I don't know how I felt about that one." And then you're wondering also, is the movie trying to make me feel disoriented and uncomfortable? And it's one of those things where I think that's maybe where I landed on a first watch, but it made me interested in like kind of going through it again at some point, despite the fact that it's, there's definitely some harrowing stuff in here as well. So I would say the big point of reference has to be the 1950s A Star Is Born, which is just like one of the greatest of all time, like melodramas, especially for the 1950s. It is so tragic. That is like one of the like most beautiful, like emotional meat grinder movies I've ever watched, because you know that Judy Garland like lived that life, and some of the details of even this movie are based on a little bit of what happened in her life. She had such a horrible story, the way that she got churned out in the industry in the 1930s, and the fact that A Star Is Born is so much of her reckoning with that, and seeing another character kind of go through the addiction and rehab that she was still just fresh out of and stuff like that. It's a very heart-wrenching and very beautiful movie. And you can feel, I think, that that's a bit of the reference point that they're going for here, that they're looking for, something that is, all about the Hollywood stardom dreams and how they say in that film, they've all gone astray. And there's there's the history of addiction and sort of self-destruction. And I think, though, they really wanted to highlight was the industry preying on people like this as well. It wasn't just like a tragic, this person, their life didn't live up to exactly what they expected to, and they couldn't take it. And it wasn't just the psychology of that. It was like, look at this thing and how it actually is built to kidnap a girl from her home and turn her into a star because it can control her and stuff like that. And you can, I think, feel a little bit of, I don't know as much about of Natalie Wood's story. Was hers something similar to Judy Garland's? Was it like, did she have her own experiences that she felt that she was, because she was obviously a child star as well. And having seen her more from, I'm not familiar with her early stuff as much as I am with her going into this era of her career when she was a melodrama actress. Like, I think about, like, I don't know, Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty I'm more familiar with, or like West Side Story, obviously. I actually also saw into print recently Mervyn LeRoy's Gypsy, which actually felt like a little bit of a trial run of what she's doing here.
Absolutely. I was thinking, I'm like, do I want to throw on Gypsy today? Because I love that musical a lot. I'm not even a musical person, but I love that musical. And like, I really love that film, but there's a lot of parallels going on there too, because
that's the scary showbiz mom angle.
Yeah, her mom was
her
like really intense. And there's that, there's a lot of stuff about her, transitioning into being an adult star and really struggling with sort of what that looks like for her. She also wanted to, in this, she's, the whole thing is like, I can sing, I open my mouth and a song comes out. And, in the book, which I have read, like the book really makes much more of a thing of like her ability to sing, and her ability to sing is very much like almost like a Judy Garland level of talent with her voice. And here it's just like she's got a nice voice, it's like but it's more about the packaging of her, and in the book it's very much like, oh, she's like a phenomenal sort of talent and what she can do with her voice. And with Natalie Wood, like she really loved to sing and always wanted to sing in her films, and she was all like mostly dubbed in everything that she was
I remember
in.
We covered that when we were doing West Side Story, that she was not she did not do those songs, even though her image and those songs are so famous for her.
And in Gypsy she did actually those are her that is her voice in Gypsy, but like even here, like there's pieces of her in here. And then she's taken over by a singer named Jackie Ward, I believe. And there's so much about this movie is centered around sound and the disembodiment of like the voice and like the sound stage and the way the sound stage sort of functions as this like symbol. And so all of that is sort of going on there too. But she, I think that she was someone that she really fought for this role. Like it was sort of described like her trying to get this part was like very relentless, because I think she really related to a lot of what was going on in it. And she did have a lot of trauma early in her life, and a lot of hardships. And I think there was pieces of that were sort of being worked out in here, is what it feels like. I know that I'm also prescribing things to it, but that is the feeling I get from it. There is a sort of catharsis and, especially by the time you get towards the end, with the feeling of like an exorcism happening, that is very, very moving and very like intense.
The way that, even the way that time works and the pacing of this film, I would say it's a little bit, it feels eventually, at least for me, somewhat padded out and a little too long. But what I also think is that there is this implication that it's aging her in 2 years. Like I thought at a certain point in this film that they were actually doing bigger time jumps than they were. And I think it was just because there's a constant piling of abuse that you have to just keep going through. And it does show in her character the way that she reacts and the way that she kind of just will sit on stairs in a room being sad while everyone is watching her walk the red carpet after a major event, and just it keeps weighing on her, even to the point where they have dialogue where it's like your hair's already going gray, and things of that nature. And I think what we see is her go from being 15 to 17 in this movie, but just because of, again, the constant abuse, it feels like it's longer. And I guess also just a note on the whiplash effect of the movie. It does feel like they might be trying to do that same thing with her character, as if, she does kind of notice some of the abusive nature of the industry pretty early on, but then a lot of it gets masked when, she's being praised by people, when she gets to walk the red carpet and actually has the cameras on her face. When she does get to perform, she seems to actually authentically enjoy that. So it just, I think that also kind of adds to the whiplash effect. Some of it works just because it's connected to the character, but then other things it just feels like tonally the movie loses control every once in a while. It doesn't bother me that much, to be honest, but I did notice it.
Yeah, well, I think you can see here that like you have like material that was clearly written by like a queer, like social realist, sort of melodrama writer, and it's clearly written by a Hollywood insider who has seen this kind of behavior and is obviously criticizing it and really wants to make a point about it, I think. And that's why you get these guys who were, so Pakula and Mulligan were on this run of these award nominated, very socially, very politically conscious dramas. And I think the idea was that they were attracted to the material and the point that they could make about it. And also, they could attract young and old sort of melodrama actors who would want to flex what they could convey on screen. So that's how you get someone like Natalie Wood, who is like, this, I see something of my own experience in this, and I agree with that message. And I kind of want to, send it forth. And we're going to do it in the style of like that fits this kind of run of lush and romantic and sometimes bitter coming of age like youth melodramas that she was involved in. Like Rebel Without a Cause is obviously huge. We last talked about her in The Searchers. Mm-hmm. Splendor in the Grass, I would once again highly recommend, just to see her and Warren Beatty make googly eyes at each other. It's just a wonderful sustained bit of like only two actors could have sold that in the exact way that they did. And you could feel, I think, between this and Gypsy, you could very much feel that there was a bitterness growing that she wanted to express. I mean, Gypsy ends up sending her into like burlesque dancing for a while, and the mom is like trying to live vicariously through her to really disastrous psychological effects on her. And so I think that was kind of the feeling that I got, was that I think there's a very smart idea. I think the material seems good. I think the filmmakers are incredibly accomplished. The cinematography looks amazing. We'll get into the production and the costume design as well. But some of this is costume design by Edith Head, who did like most of Billy Wilder's and Preston Sturges and like Hitchcock movies. So even just on like a costuming level, it's a gorgeous movie. And it just kind of felt like the studio was like, what are we making? And I do understand that Mulligan did have some issues with them. I tried researching to find out exactly what they were. I only heard people just talking about them, and apparently he didn't have a great experience making this. And the only thing I could really find was that they didn't know what to do with the ending, was like the big thing. And we'll get to that when we get to it, because it's a crazy ending that lurches in 3 different directions in about 30 seconds. Yeah,
that's probably why I loved it, but we'll get to it. Yeah. I totally get what you're saying.
But I think it just speaks to the point of like the studio were trying to figure out, like, we were kind of being sold and funding a classical, maybe even at times sentimental industry melodrama. Mm-hmm. And what we were sort of handed in some of the material was this very depressing, very cynical New Hollywood, maybe even satire of that kind of movie, where it's confrontationally and playfully using that style. And as a result, there's an element to it here where it's like, it's so beautifully made, and every once in a while I felt like the script, and to talk about sort of the parade of abuses you were talking about, Jamie, was that it was so kind of determined to get to those like critiques and points that I did feel like, for me, A Star Is Born is such a lived in movie and experience and performance, that this one I did feel where it was just like, very quickly getting to the things that it wants to say. And one of the things for me was that I think done to sort of an interesting effect, but they don't even really get that much into like the joy that she has for singing or performing. The vibes were actually so off in the first scene
from the beginning.
And I was kind of like, girl, why? What are you doing? And it was just kind of a weird reaction to have, because normally, and I think in a movie like this, you would get that feeling of like betrayal or kind of like heartbreak on, oh, this beautiful thing was not what I thought it was, or as Judy Garland sings, the dreams, they've gone astray. And here I was like, they were evil vibes, and they did not. The second Christopher Plummer is on screen, you are like, it's even, Jesus Christ, get me out of here.
He's evil. No, he's pure evil. Like, his name is Swan, and I'm just like, it literally is Phantom of the Paradise. Like, however many years beforehand. I'm just like, it's just like it's absurd. Like, he's pure evil. Every time he opens his mouth, I'm like, are you Shere Khan from the Jungle Book? What is happening? What am I
And this came out 9 months after The Sound of Music, which is crazy, right?
It's nuts.
You'd even think in the intro, no worries at all. You'd even think in the intro, like when she goes into the vocal booth, which would be the initial image of her doing what she loves, that it would more focus on the actual singing of it and all that, and the joy it brings her. But instead it just kind of comes off more like it's something that she does, then she sends it off to the record label, and then it's like all of a sudden they're there ready to take advantage of this poor family. It happens very quickly in that sense. And I agree, it doesn't necessarily have that kind of, that lead up that would present her to be very passionate about it. And, works hard towards it every day, even though she lives on the boardwalk.
Even the fact that the car's parked there the next day too, there's something so funny about it's just a slight bit caricatured, because I don't doubt that all of this is fucking truthful, and we know that Hollywood has done worse than what's depicted in this movie, especially what a studio would fund in the 1960s. But there is something funny to me just about they're like, oh, here's a poor girl who's, she's got short hair, dirty clothes, no shoes, she's smoking, she's living on like this dingy rundown like seaside boardwalk of crummy chipped wall shack booths of souvenir shops and all this kind of stuff. She's selling like Hollywood memorabilia or like autographed like headshots, and they're like, she goes into a booth, she records a song, she sends it to the studio. The next day, and I love that the mother even says this too, played by Ruth Gordon from Rosemary's Baby. She's her mother and also like the local fortune teller. She goes, she's scared of the Hollywood car that pulls up. She's like, that's a hearse. And I was like, oh, we are underlining in the first 5 minutes, and even when you get to the studio itself, like it's right away that Plummer's Swan character is pretty much very nefarious, just evil right off the bat. He has bad intentions, and there's no hiding it. A lot of the time with these movies, they do kind of the glitz and glamour at first, and this one is just like, no, it's pretty bad right off the bat, but she's in a position in which, they can take advantage of her because she has nothing else back home. It doesn't really, it's pretty relentless in that sense. And to the point where I couldn't, like at first, at least. Now, especially with the ending, we'll get to that. But it's very obvious now, after I've seen the whole movie, that a lot of this has like a more satirical element to it. But I was kind of having a hard time reading that in like the first half, just because it is still doing its very melodramatic, old school Hollywood thing. But it's just that they're, like we're saying, they're drilling these plot points home so quickly and so abruptly that it's just kind of funny. So it's a mixed bag in that sense for me, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think that speaking of like the sort of car showing up and everything, like I really see the film as them sort of making it like a dark fairy tale. Like that's how it's very like all that stuff is super overt. And like what you were saying about like there's no glitz in this movie. There is no glamour. There is no wooing of like, hey, isn't this great? There is no like, partying. There is no every gathering that there is, like she is not part of. They are removed from her. She is always isolated and sequestered. Like even as she gets there, it is so ominous and like so dehumanizing. everything she goes through, like from the get-go, is so dehumanizing. And, you know, I love that the camera tends to center her a lot. Like, it's almost like the camera's like, okay, everything going on around her is sort of doing everything. Everybody around her is doing all they can to sort of strip her away. And there is a real focus on like these close-up shots where like she, you know, doesn't have a ton of dialogue once she gets to the studio the first time. Like, she doesn't really talk all that much throughout the rest of the film, but the camera always sees her. It's always like locked into her face, or very much locked into kind of what it, sort of communicating what that feeling is of emptiness and aloneness. Like, I think about, she gets driven to the studio for her screen test. She doesn't even know it's for a screen test because the car the car just takes her somewhere. She has no idea where she's even going. And like, no one even gets out of the car for her that first time. She just knows, oh, they got my, you know, recording and they want to, you know, see me. And she gets there and it's this huge soundstage. And she is just enveloped in this
ghost town
space.
of a Warner lot
town.
that they're
using.
using.
It is a ghost town.
Yeah.
There is no, like, you're every movie about like fame, you're used to seeing studios hustling and bustling. You're used to seeing like all sorts of people, you know, people on set. Nothing is happening. There's like one piece of set that's kind of very depressingly like moving with,
and it's huge
like on like
too.
And it's huge.
It's overlooming.
It's
like it's something like, that's intimidating,
like
but not exciting. She's just kind of like, what is this?
Where am I?
Yeah.
It's
otherworldly.
Very like, it's very much just like, where am I being whisked away to? And it, you know, she does that screen test and they have her dressed up as sort of a Hollywoodized, you know, version of kind of who she is in her life. But even that, because of what the film is already a Hollywoodized version of that type of character. So there's all these weird, it's crazy. Like, it's just layer upon layer of just like these weird things being refracted back at each other. But she does this song, you know, for the screen test. And, she's looking out and like no one can be bothered. Everybody is out there. I'm like, it feels like, is this a political conspiracy movie? Is this the Parallax View? What is going on? Like, everyone is just, no one is like looking at her. No one, the camera, like everyone is shrouded in shadow. No, it's all apathy. She's surrounded by total apathy. And it's so like, even when they say cut, no one says anything to her. And she literally is just like, to herself, like you can see that she's thinking, I guess that's that, then I'll go back to my life. And so she's so surprised when the car comes back and like evil Christopher Plummer is there and like whisking her away. And then even that is like a total ambush. She has people, I mean, right away she's referred to as it. People talk about her in the room as if she's not there. She's told that her mother's going to be institutionalized. She's told her guardianship is now handed over to her sister. Like, you're going to do this stuff. It's like, it's just this total ambush, and no one is even really has the courtesy of even like almost like acknowledging her as a human being as they are doing. Like, they're not even pretending that it's anything other than what it is. It's
it really becomes the Christopher Plummer show for a little bit, because he's obviously the studio head, Raymond Swan, and he's doing this thing where he's doing a very like devilish smirk that like would be charming if his character wasn't the most evil man in the universe, but he's so controlling and like he's so dapper in like his black suit and like his bowler's hat and everything like that, but he's so drenched in shadows the first time that we meet him, and it's that even his entrance is like this very shadowy like staircase that he walks down, and you just hear the echo of the empty soundstage as he's walking closer, and you're just like, this just feels wrong. And the way that it's obviously visually using the set there, the way it eventually uses these sort of like vast like mansions and sort of parties that they're doing as well, but they just feel so kind of hollow and empty. And some of the first things he's doing to her is like shining a light on her face or bossing her around, seeing how well she takes instruction, and then finding out about why she sings and what she's interested in. She does relay this philosophy to him that my mother says this world is a garbage dump and we're just the flies that it attracts, and when I sing the smell doesn't seem so bad, which is a really dark way of saying you want to be a singer, or like the singing makes you like want to kill yourself less, is ultimately all she's saying.
It's like,
he's like, perfect, we found it's exactly what I need. This is exactly what me and my wife have been looking for to exploit.
It's like she gets it. She understands. Like, because all these people that she's surrounded by are so disillusioned and like so self-destructive and so self-hating and like have their own coping mechanisms. And, you know, it's the question of is this kid, is this child, you know, going to be swallowed up by all of that? Because the people that she sort of ends up trying to tether herself to, you know, they're just part of the system and are just trying to sort of get by their own sort of, you know, fucked up cycles of abandonment.
Yeah.
And
And all of it.
And I was just blown away that, you know, like right away, everything that everyone intends, you know exactly what kind. He's like, yeah, I'm going to give you the rags to riches story, but it is going to be, I'm going to have full ownership of you. He gets a great monologue where he's like, you know, he's, you know, I'm going to make something out of you. And you go, oh, that's a beautiful thing. You know, like he's going to make her a star. And then the word is money. I'm going to make money out of you. And then he's talking about how she, you know, I'm going to make you a mixture of orphan and clown, and you're going to have a heart of gold and a dirty face, but you're going to sing. And also, it doesn't smoke, it doesn't bite its fingernails or cut its hair without permission. You're going to become America's little Valentine and go straight to the top of the tree. And, you know, it was just, it's like he's making, it is a very Faustian thing. It is like deal with the devil kind of moment, but also she's not even like being like, oh yes, I can't wait. It's just like, she's just falling into it because she's like, I guess this is sort of what I wanted when I submitted the record. And I guess this is just how it works. I guess my mom is just going to be institutionalized now, and they're going to officially say that she's dead because we don't want like the tabloids writing about how I have a crazy mother who almost like burned her house down, and like that would be weird. And she's just totally going through the motions of the accepted assembly line of how this works.
Yeah, and there's as he says later on in the film, but there's essentially, you know, there's a ton of Daisy Clovers for this industry to use, and the problem is that it's completely legal. I mean, he sets down these contracts that are just perfectly worded, and essentially he owns you for 5 years or however long that the contract says, and it's just you know, it's kind of presented almost as a favor at first until it's signed, and then all of a sudden you're just a tool, and that's it. And you know, there is that thing where it's like she really can't do anything about it because he's like, if you're at a certain point, he's like, if you're legally able to do the job, you have to work. And then if you can't, well, then I'm just going to take insurance out on you and send you somewhere that you, and she's a teenager. So, I mean, she'd just be homeless and have no support. Her mother isn't there, that she's been thrown into an asylum.
Well, yeah, they make her aunt like her official guardian or something like that so that they can have control of her person, or her sister. That's right.
Yeah. Who's, you know, just like we learn, like never visits and is obviously just a total opportunist in the entire thing and just wants to get caught up in sort of that life and live off of the promise of fame that he's going to have. So it's like, well, that works out for, you know, everybody too.
There's also Katie, you were saying this thing about, it's like she's never really a part of the party, or you never really see the glitz and glam, but I like the moments that they do where it shows her either outside, like I already said the example where she's on the stairs, but then there's the other one where, and I guess we will end up talking about Robert Redford's character, but there is a moment where she and him are going to get married, and they don't show the ceremony. Again, they show the isolated her preparing for it. It's always her preparing for something. It's because she's about to be used as a tool. Even for the wedding, it's so that it looks more proper to, you know, society and everything like that. So it's just,
oh yeah, she has no control. They're coaching her, they're dressing her, they're teaching her how to handle interviews about how her parents are dead. And they're like, tell a story about how like you wish like Fred Astaire was your dad or something. I don't know. You know?
And then I mean, even like I do really think that a lot of this film is about, and it's part of, I think, the gamble that it makes that I think can turn people off from it, which I totally understand, where it's like so much about what they're not showing you, and just as much about what they are. And like even when, you know, there's the whole kind of like, okay, we're gonna get married type of thing, and you think it's gonna, you know, it's this one moment where we actually are seeing her, you know, very happy for like a moment, and then it like dissolves into this shot of like all of these black cars circling the sort of entrance. Like it feels like a funeral, like immediately feels like a funeral. And I think that it sort of mirrors the image of the merry-go-round thing that she kind of goes to, where she's going into the sound booth studio and this, circus stuff which there is also other things that they're doing with that. But like, there's just everything that sort of seems like, we kind of are like, oh, there's some things she's happy about, and then like immediately the visual of it is like, yeah, no, this is not good.
And even,
which is we know it's not, but we just want to see her happy.
Yeah, no, I mean, the Robert Redford element, I think, is the most important element of that stuff, because
really interesting.
This is a very early role for him. He has an also starring credit in this one. And obviously just one of like the gods of like the old school handsome charm, that he brought into like the new Hollywood sort of like crime movie era. Like he was able to do like buddy charisma, leading man romanticism. He could throw on the tough guy intensity when he needed it to. And this is like, I think the only one I've seen from this era, even for him, is like maybe The Chase, the one that he did with Marlon Brando and Jane Fonda, which he's really good in. But around, and I think shortly after this had to have been Butch Cassidy and Tell Them Willie Boy Is Here. And Downhill Racer. Those are all I forget that those are all 1969. I forget sometimes that he won a BAFTA that year. They essentially gave him the BAFTA for like best rookie season trophy, because they gave him the BAFTA for all three movies, which was very funny. I don't know that they've ever done that again.
That's crazy.
He's so good in Downhill Racer. Oh my god,
he's spectacular. And he is giving, it's very funny. There's a sort of like mildly, it's kind of I think this got like a negative Kale review for the most part, but there was part of the review that I read where she was absolutely blown away by the Robert Redford performance in this, and I kind of agreed, because it's just one of the, like, it's the performance that's unlike so many of the other ones in the movie, and every time he's on screen, he's kind of like a breath of fresh air. You're like, oh my god, thank god this horror show is like briefly over.
Slightly,
I can just look.
Even though he's playing an older man also dating a 15-year-old, so you're like,
and it's kind of horrible that you even have that view of it, but
you're just like, oh, thank God, and you're like, wait a minute,
that's the thing.
That's not like, good either.
Even the thing that kind of alleviates some of that pain and whatever else you're feeling during the film, you're like, oh wait, though he's still also an abuser. That's a bummer. Damn. Like,
he is the most charming drunk, though, when he's dual wielding the glasses and giving his like speech about like the Prince of Darkness or whatever he's talking about. He's very funny, and I think the thing that I think she relates to him when you first meet him, because it's right after the sequence where she gets like announced as a star, and there's a direct address in front of the theater patrons, and Christopher Plummer is holding her up like a prized ham that he just brought over to everyone, and he's like, move over, stars, I've got like a new star. And when we're introduced to Robert Redford, who's playing this sort of matinee idol named Wade Lewis, or Lewis Wade, I guess, but they said they flipped his names around when he actually got to Hollywood.
because of a poll, which I love that detail of them like acknowledging that piece of sort of the back end of things.
That's very funny. But the thing that I think she's attracted to is just that, obviously he's also an actor, but he, as he describes it, he's also like a fallen angel, like just like her. He's just like, I have to sacrifice a certain amount of my autonomy, and I have to live inside this facade. Like all these things that you're currently experiencing, you can get over them. Like you can, like, he looks like he's comfortable and he looks like he's happy despite dealing with the same things that she's dealing with. And I think that that's like the thing that immediately hits for her, and she finds, that's what that romantic connection comes from, because he is just like, he's got red flags, we'll say. Like the fact that the first thing he's doing is like stealing booze and like, immediately being like, I'm going to go get like your mom drunk inside the institution with us. But he's also like, he's kind of patient and he's flirtatious and he seems kind of outwardly caring or warm in a way. And it's just,
but then he ends up abandons her
he's
twice.
going through his own shit.
Completely abandoned. Like he's not capable of like staying with her for more than like 15 hours, it seems, at a time.
Yes.
And my favorite thing is that like when
lives
he
on a
has
houseboat.
When he has the nerve to like, when she sort of later on after she wakes up and gone for the first time, like time passes, she's shooting another movie or whatever, and he's there, and she's like dressed up as a clown, and she comes over, and he's just like talking to her about like, oh, I'm really sorry, like, I'm here, look at these postcards, I meant to send them. And then she takes the postcards and she looks at them, and then we hear what they say on them, and it literally says happy birthday, Merry Christmas. Like, the postcards that he didn't even send have nothing on them. Like, it's so depressing. It's so depressing. Like, their relationship, which is barely even anything, it shouldn't even be happening in the first. Like, it's just
and it's kind of interesting too, because Redford is just a very naturally charming performer that. He still, as he's doing those things and she's reading it off, he right away gets back into it, where he's like wiping her face, and then he's just like, oh, look, it's wiped away, it's a restart. And it's like that one little charming line just wipes the slate clean, and now no matter what kind of apathetic love he's giving her, it doesn't matter. He's able to do it again, and it is part of that repetitive cycle. If anything, it's strange to think about now, but like, he is the charming kind of presence in the movie, but then now looking back and talking about it, it's like, at least with Plummer, he's just outright evil. Redford is kind of playing the
you get what you sign up for with Plummer. Yeah. Wade Lewis, he's the actual part that I was talking about. He's like the heartbreak. He's the betrayal. He's and it's just perfect for Redford, because when he's on, he's fucking on. Like, that laugh he pulls when he pulls up in the car, and he's like, I agree, watching her write like Raymond is a swine and like a mother killer or something that she's like writing on the studio wall, because they go and visit her mother in the institution. They say that they can't do that anymore because we don't want the tabloids following you guys around and finding out about this. And that's when he takes her on the houseboat, where his version of romanticism is just like getting her drunk and stuffing her in a blanket on the boat. While he does open up with her a little bit, though, where she's talking about she wants to get stoned and drive a dump truck so I can dump garbage on Swan's head, and he calls her a crazy monster child streaking around like a hare while the hounds are after you. And then he follows it up like just very like, and they are after you. As like, I've been there, I've seen this, like, he is being kind of, in his own way, he's being codedly honest, but at the same time, he's also like, yeah, I am going to sleep with a 15-year-old girl who's being signed onto contract. And then I'm going to marry said 15-year-old girl, because that's the only way that the studio would accept this, this sort of arrangement that we want. But also, I am disappear to go shoot movies and go get drunk and go to parties. So I am clearly not husband material in any way.
And they also, it doesn't really matter by the end of the film, but I guess it's more in the book, I think I read, but it's also hinted that he's a bisexual man and he's having affairs.
Oh, they say it in the movie.
Oh, right.
They say it. It's like full on text. Yeah,
like that?
It's like full on text, because the Melora, Plummer's wife, who has been through the exact same thing with Robert Redford, like, she calls him up and basically she says, oh, like, it's his new lover. I didn't recognize his voice or something, and she's like, he never could resist a charming boy.
Right.
So it's right. They there is more of that in the book from what I remember, but it's definitely they definitely make it text, which is sort of you kind of expect it to sort of be a bit more under the surface, but it's not. They bring it.
Yeah, it's kind of brave at the time. I even read Lambert talk about the fact that like so many of the stuff that he wrote, like he had to be coded about that kind of stuff, and it was just interesting that it was so in the text of the book that they kind of had to do it. And I think he even mentioned that like he wasn't sure if they were going to let that get through or not, but they did leave it in that they were like, yeah, Redford's a bisexual man just living his life and destroying other lives in the midst while he's doing it. Because that is the most, I think, heartbreaking section of the movie, is that like the Swans obviously become concerned about what being seen with him is doing to her reputation of their precious new Valentine. So he publicly tells them that he asked her to marry him and to sort of seal this like flourishing, seemingly legitimate romance with their alternate performative career lives. Be like, we'll just kind of merge them together. And the way that he does it is so interesting. It's in like this sort of like public way in front of them where clearly he hadn't asked, but he staged like a little bit of a show in front of the swans to be like, she's going to agree right now and she's so happy. And obviously we find out later that the swans also both know that exactly, like, he's going to do exactly what he's going to do. He's going to take her on the honeymoon to the Arizona desert, to this fucking dusty motel where he's going to drink and he's going to disappear. And then they go, you know, and what's that thing that, you know, because when she eventually comes back, obviously that's when we find out that Raymond's wife, it's Melora. She also had a relationship with him and had the exact same experience, and that, you know, she eventually, when she decided to marry Raymond instead and kind of become a sort of a business partner with him as a result of, as she calls it, they're going to give you pills, but it's not a headache, it's a heartache, as she's like hysterically laughing.
And she screams it.
Oh
she,
my God.
Screams heartache, and it's like, it's,
yeah.
And when she like comes back from the desert, you know, completely just shell-shocked from being abandoned for the second time on her on her wedding night. She, when she gets back to the studio, like Melora is like sitting in this like chair, and it's like a jump scare. Like she like emerges out of like the darkness and is just completely wasted. And it's a really like, you're just sort of, this is not how she is in any other scene in the movie. So it's very like, you know, even though everyone's intentions are laid bare from the beginning, her kind of character and sort of what's, you know, what she's sort of been thinking about that entire relationship from the beginning, and kind of
the history is kind of bubbling up.
Because she's like, I cut myself, you know, I tried to kill myself, and she's just like, do you cut yourself? And then she's like, sometimes they still hurt. It's really like intense. And she ends up being Daisy ends up being the one that is sort of almost like trying to take care of this woman who is like not okay. In that scene, you know, and is this kid who is, you know, still reeling from everything. And then the next morning is when Plummer kind of, you know,
oh God, that scene's crazy.
That scene's insane, and it never cuts to her at all. Like, you don't even know if she's awake when he's talking. Like, it never cuts to her. It's so it's so haunting.
Are you talking about when he starts to carry her and then kisses her next to the pool?
Yes.
And the scene before that, when he's talking to her and he's explaining that, like, look, what you had wasn't true love. I understand that you feel that way right now. This was just Wade's routine. He loves to leave a trail of like heartbroken women. And I knew when you married him that was what was going to happen to you. I knew this pain was going to happen. But also, if I hadn't said you couldn't marry him and forbidden, then you guys would have just like run off together and done it. He's like, so I did it this way so that I calculated this amount of pain as like a wake up call to you, essentially. It's such like a dark way of framing that, to then be like, also, and now I'm going to take care of you and protect you like a father, and I'm also going to kiss you while I do that, which is that you're like, and it's such a rehearsed moment on Plummer's behalf that it's like, oh, did he pull this on Melora as well?
It does come off like such a good manipulator that he's basically the devil. Like, that's a set. Like, it's almost
literally
a
the
superpower.
devil. Like, he's literally the devil. And and also like again with the sort of just these scene transitions that just reveal so much without, you know, saying anything. It's right after that, like when it's like, oh, you know, he kisses her, and right after that we dissolve into seeing the beach for the first time in a long time. She's back with her mother. The mother's not in an institution anymore. They've got like their own house now, and it's like just the horrible like realization of like what that gain took. And like what that transaction
by embedding with me, I will be nicer to you.
Here's your mom back. Here's your mom back. Yeah, it's so fucking gross. Like, it's, oh my God, it's
and also being like, Wade, by the way, he's great at what he does. I just signed him for 3 more pictures, despite the fact of what he's just done to you. Because he's like, and do you know why? Because he makes mothers and wives around America feel that way about him. That's like his talent. And you know, it's like Jesus.
It's wild. Also, I find there's something with the performance. I mean, it's very subtle, but with the performance with Natalie Wood, when she is kind of, it feels like she's kind of passed out in his arms when he kisses her. she's not moving at all, and then he kisses her, and there is actual time that kind of passes as it happens, and then right before it fades away, it shows her putting her arms around him, and it's just this very strange thing of like it's almost like she's just asleep and going along with these things at this point. Like she doesn't know any other path. And it's just this kind of automatic survival instinct. And I thought that was really subtle and just very dark again.
Yeah.
And also the scenes before where he's making her, like, it really does heavily imply that a lot of this fame is just artificially created by these yes. studios. They pick and choose. Like there's that one where it's on, she goes outside after a meeting and she sees all of these papers on his desk. And essentially it's just like one big memo. And it's just, it might as well just say, make her famous. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
And then it's just publicity.
Well, because that's more interesting. He doesn't want to pay for someone who's already talented and famous. He wants to pick someone who he can completely own and control and turn them into a star, because then they're a more valuable economic asset to him in terms of contract and, you know, the level of things he can actually get out of them. And yeah, it's so interesting to see a movie from the perspective of like, here's a person who gets sucked into the orbit of a guy who that's his mission, and what it feels like, you know, from that perspective, which is just to be like a completely, you know, voiceless, listless, it just happens to you almost, you know? Yeah,
because it's either this abuse and you live in a mansion, or you go back to being, well, and it'd be worse because she doesn't have her mother or her you know, her trailer on the boardwalk. Like she'd have literally nothing. So he's just put her in a position in which she can take advantage at any point in time.
Yeah. And I think that like the, you know, that you're going to hear from me sort of song that we see, which is what we see when she's basically introduced to the world, you know, is, and I find it fascinating because it's like, it's not like she's playing a character in that scene. Like the song references herself as Daisy Clover. There's this whole like introduction that comes with it that is already aligning her with these stars in the sky with pictures of like Fred Astaire and Myrna Loy and like, you know, Jean Harlow. And it's already like, she's never even been in anything and they're already putting her at that. It's like, and even just
a star is born, quite literally.
A star is literally born.
You get a Citizen Kane style like newsreel about her meteoric rise with the screaming fans and the journalists and the photographers and everyone go see the big top kid, exciting, dazzling.
We're telling you is like the big top kid, and even just like you're gonna hear from me. It's like like vaguely threatening. Like it's like this promise. Like you will like you're definitely gonna hear from me. Like it's not gonna stop. Whether you like it or not, you're gonna hear from me. And that sort of, you know, and we'll talk about with Rat Fink too. I really love the acknowledgement of that manufacturing piece to it, and it's, you know, it's very there's been stuff like that before, but I do find that the way that it is sort of thinking about Hollywood in like a post-Hollywood Babylon era, like this with the Scandal magazines, and like also a Hollywood that is sort of bottoming out in the mid 60s, like this idea that it is really kind of thinking about myth making, thinking about what star personas are, this idea of star personas and manufacturing sort of fame, and also just trying to think about what this industry even wants to be, with everything else kind of going on in world cinema. There's a lot of that kind of weird tension going on as well that I think it's kind of trying to do, and doesn't really know how to fully work out, which is also part of why I love this movie so much, because I do think there is a messiness to what it's trying to do that I find the effort and the sort of that conflict very engaging. And you know, I think that with sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. You can finish. Go ahead.
Oh no, I had lost my train of thought. So.
Okay, no problem. Sorry about that.
It happens.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
also,
well, no, I was gonna say I think that like the jumping off like what you were just saying there, the idea I think that really worked for me and that I latched onto eventually was just the difference between this manufactured image of herself and what her actual experiences were. And I think for her, it seemed normal to everyone else that this is just how it works and this is just who you are. And, but for her, the entire experience is one of discombobulation or feeling like you have become separate or like, Daisy Clover, the girl who maybe dreamt about singing one day, is very different than the Daisy Clover who actually is under contract and living in fucking Swan's house and is practically, being sexually abused by him in order for her to make sure that so that her mom can like not live in an institution, which she wasn't even doing before, before I got involved with you in the first place. And I think the fullest realization of that was in like the sequence of the movie, which was the ADR sound booth sequence of her re-recording her singing voice over the picture of her dancing, which is when they tell her, you're going back to work, you're focusing on your career and your performances after everything that went wrong with Wade. And it starts as like this extended sort of like wacky circus routine. And there's like lion heads, she's being sawed in half. And there's this audience of pink balloons. There's a fucking clown costume. And they're giving her, the full decadent Hollywood sequence treatment. And then she has to go and record the voice for it. And the way that she's forced in the framing of it and in the editing sequencing of it to be just completely distanced from her own image, both in the booth where we are with her, hearing her sing normally, we cut outside of it where we can't hear her, and all we can hear is like the reels and sort of like the sound cues as they're bringing up the scene for her to sing in time with it. And then you can also see the reflection of the movie in the glass as the crew is watching and the people who are literally hovering over her, giving her the demands and being like, you are like a sound box machine. We press you, you give us the sounds that we want. And there's just something so creepy and unsettling about the way that her voice and face just become totally disconnected through simply space and editing. And she begins to see her own performance as the screen as like not part of herself. And she has like just a full on like screaming nervous breakdown in the booth. And it was one of those scenes where I was like, this is almost like proto Lynchian or something. I was like freaking out about what they were having her. I think Katie, you mentioned I saw that you did a write up about it where you mentioned
this scene. I am obsessed with this scene. It's sort of hyperbole, but not really. That when I watched the scene, I was like, oh shit, like I feel changed by this. Like it fucking just got right in there and like spoke to me in such a oh my God, like I could not stop thinking about it for days and days afterwards. Like this scene,
it's definitely like the scene of the movie. I think that really, I honestly watching it, I kind of wished there was a little bit more of her feeling disconnected from her performances, or more of like the actual craft, and more of like that scene you were talking about too, when she sings her screen test, and it's just like it's like this weird alien crew looking at her. Like I almost those details in this were so well done that I was kind of like, man, I would have liked more of it.
I think that like for me, like the film is, obviously the whole film leads up to this scene, but I do find that like it's laying in all of this stuff where she is, even from the very beginning when we see her go into the soundstage, even before she even gets to Swan Studio, where we don't even get to hear her sing then. Like it's very dark and we kind of see the silhouette of her snapping, but like it's, there was this piece actually that a woman named Amy Lawrence wrote called Losing Her Voice, Silencing Two Daughters of Hollywood, where the whole thing is about, using Inside Daisy Clover and Postcards from the Edge, which both have scenes of like post-recording becoming the site where like women recognize the industrial practices that have alienated them from themselves as women and as performers. And it's a really, really interesting piece. And I was also reading about Michel Chion. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he wrote Audio Vision, Sounds on Screen, and he refers to this sort of climactic narrative moment of compulsive vocal release as the screaming point. And now, like, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh shit, like, every version of that is like basically something I'm going to be obsessed with. And it's, I think that like from the beginning, even when they show the "You're Gonna Hear From Me" scene and we watch her watching herself, And again, there's all that other stuff with, it's Natalie Wood's actual voice, then it's not. And this sort of disembodiment of her identity and the way that everything that she is experiencing from Swan and from just this isolating, alienating, lonely, experience with fame that is just, so methodical in the way that it strips her away from herself. I think that by the time you get to that scene, it feels like there's like almost like a rip in the fabric of her reality. Like she does not even recognize who that is up there, because
and the movie with the sound design,
and the movie, it's all like laid
yeah.
into what you're actually experiencing and feeling, and it's crazy. And you just, even with kind of the weird stuff that the film's doing tonally, that scene comes up and you're like, whoa, what's happening? Like it feels, like you said, it feels very Lynch. Like, and I know people overuse that, but it really feels like it's tapping into that vein.
Yeah, I saw someone compare it to the Mulholland Drive sequences
audition
where, like, because there's the audition scene, but then there's also the scene where they're watching the performance and like the voice disappears and stuff like that. And that's what it kind of felt like, where it feels just alien, it feels wrong, but it's also part of the industry. It's part of performance. It's part of Hollywood. So, it like manipulating space and sound through the kind of editing techniques that the filmmakers are using is the experience. And then it's so unnatural and to her and it's a very cool way of highlighting that.
Yeah, and I think that like the way that she, it's also kind of part of why she relates to Wade is like the way he almost refers to himself in third person, where there is that separation of self, and because the sort of Swan stuff and this is almost, there is that sort of dark fairy tale quality. It feels like there is almost like, I mean, there isn't, but figuratively, it almost feels like there can be a kind of alchemy in putting yourself on screen in the way that it dissociates you from yourself. And like that scene and the way that each time she has to do, they have to go again, and it's like her voice, the absence of it from what we're seeing, the way she is failing to recognize who she is on that screen, you get further and further away from yourself. And when she's yelling, when she's screaming finally at the end of that scene, she's yelling, make her stop, someone stop her. It's so like hard. It's so gut wrenching. Like it really is. And then she goes on like she doesn't speak for days afterwards. Like she goes on kind of a strike, which upsets everybody, obviously, because their entire livelihood is being,
she's become completely disconnected to herself, which is, it's kind of cool too, because there's this one effect that they use in the number right before that with the circus number, before she goes into the booth. And there's this cool effect that just works for a special effect for the movie and for the number itself, where they have a body double go through a mirror frame to make it look like her reflection is kind of switching physically within the mirror. It's really, really cool. But the whole song is essentially about like the illusion of the allure, and how really in the subtext it's like how things are kind of just phony and kind of just it's trickery on the inside. Like there's also the lines of within the song that are kind of alluding to her feeling trapped, like how could you ever give it up? And in the context of the song, it's like, this is what a glamorous, amazing life that I'm living. It's so exciting and vibrant and colorful. But what she's saying is like, I feel trapped. I can't give this up because I can't go anywhere. And then just having this scene directly after in the ADR booth is incredible. And I love the isolated vocals that they do. They don't actually ever give you the instrumental with her singing, so it just feels like she's kind of locked in that box. It's only her. She's still forced to sing the song that she's no longer feeling a connection to. But
as like Jamie, as a singer, do you relate to this? Is this what it feels like in the booth?
Well, in a way, like, yeah, honestly, I feel like I'm probably meaner to myself than the people in the booth a lot of the time. But what I did find is the complete apathy that the producers have when they're giving her instructions, where it's just like, you were a little off, do it again. Yeah, that was great. Do it again. Like, but having no emotion or no real feedback, that can drive you as a performer fucking crazy, because you're just like, well, they want to do it again, so clearly I'm not doing it right, but you're not really giving me anything that I can work with, and you're clearly unsatisfied. And so you just start getting into your own head. You're in the booth by yourself too, so you're kind of having this weird effect where you feel like you're in an exhibit or something like that, like in a zoo. It's just it can be strange if you have that. If it depends on the room you're in. Sometimes you're right in with the producer, but when you have these big vocal booths where, you know, there's 5 people that you can't hear talk about you and you're in the booth, because they have a button where you can talk or not talk, and so you'll see people like just kind of like, you know, talking amongst themselves, but you don't know what they're saying. Then they'll press the button and be like, yeah, why don't we do that one more time? And you're like, what did they say about me? What was that? And it just kind of becomes this self-conscious thing that becomes a dangerous cycle if you're not careful. But obviously this is the most nightmarish version of that. But yeah, it was interesting to watch
as kind of like a final straw as well, on top of like all of the abuses and all of the weird psychological torture of this assembly line of manufacturing a star out of a, you know, poor exploited child that you picked up literally off the street. You know, like it's wild to think about that. That's what this story is, but it's ultimately what it is. And it also results in a, I don't know. There's multiple words I want to call this finale. Some of it, part of me was baffled. Part of me was like, oh wow, more like interested. Shocked. Part of me was like, I could not believe what I was watching, because it starts in like I said this in my review, but I was like, I don't think a movie has better summed up the whiplash effect of what the entire movie is doing to you in its final minutes than this movie, because it goes from this just spectacularly unsettling sequence that's so expertly shot and edited together and feels like they have so much control over exactly what they're saying and exactly the experience that she's going through that they want to convey. And then they have kind of like the wrap up sequence where it was like, okay, well, we need to deal with all of the various sort of like caricatured Hollywood types and wrap up the, you know, the drama of it, which is basically each character trying to pressure her to go back to work, even though she has gone on like a vocal strike due to the situation that she just went through, because it was so horrifying. And you have, you know, Wade trying to come back in and romance her into going back to work and fulfilling her contract with Sherry and Roses, and You Can't Stop Singing, The World's Still a Garbage Dump, which is probably the only good pitch that like anybody makes. But you also have like Valora come in and be like, I kind of understand like what it is that you're going through, and, you know, I don't really like blame you for it, and, you know, just try and hang on like me is basically what she says, which is, you know, I guess at least honest, but like, you're not maybe what you want to hear in this particular situation. And then you have Raymond show up, who is just like, I am going to use full pressure. You know, haven't you been bluffing long enough? I'm going to forcefully kiss you. He slaps her. He talks about playing rough, and he's like, I'm going to dismiss your nurse, and I'm giving you an hour to get dressed and bathed and perfumed, or essentially you will lie here and starve. And if you starve, I will sue you for not fulfilling your contract after you starve to death. Yeah. You know, like he's like, going crazy. And then he's still like, afterwards, I don't care what happens to you. There's more where you came from. Like, he doesn't give a shit at this point. There's never really been much of a mask, but whatever little mask he had on is completely off now. He drops it entirely, because he's not even doing at that point like the devilish, playful smirk of like, you know, I'm anymore. It's just pure like it's I don't know. I can't think of the word, but yeah. And it was so harrowing of a moment, and I was like, oh, like is this going to have like the darkest ending ever? Like what exactly is? I don't know exactly what it's going for, and what they opt for is one of the craziest things I've ever seen that I'm still trying to figure out how I feel about it, because I was like, she tries to kill herself, which is actually kind of makes sense based on what you just watched happen. Like, and that's a horrible, melodramatic nature of everything, and the tone. It almost seems like it's inevitable that it's leading there. Yeah. But she's not going to do it gracefully, like in A Star Is Born, where you get like that moment where he like walks into the sea, and it's this big like mythic moment for him, and he's also doing it to like not cause more pain because he's so hurt about the fact that someone being with him is like horrible for them. And in this case, you're like, oh, she's just going to kill herself. And in this case, she's going to do it with a gas oven. And then somehow for some reason, the movie is like, well, actually, we want to write our way to like more of like an empowering story where she gets herself back, she gets her voice back, she gets her identity back, she overcomes this thing. And I understand the instinct to be like, we want to revert to that. The way that they write themselves out of, we have her committing suicide with a gas oven, but actually she's going to stop doing that, is through a bit of slapstick, where like the nurse is like interrupting her and like the phone is ringing and then she burns herself on the oven. Like she's trying to kill herself, but the joke is that she can't kill herself. And then she decides that, hey, you know, I'm just going to blow up the house the same way like my mom set her house on fire earlier in the movie as kind of like a callback, and she cuts her hair to the way it was at like the beginning. She takes command of her life again. But it's one of the most tonally strange transitions I've ever seen a movie try to pull in like less than 10 seconds, where it's like, oh, is she gonna kill herself? And then it's like, oh, she can't kill herself. Here's like a Bugs Bunny bit if he tried to kill himself. And then bam, she blows up Hollywood and then she's off.
Blows up Hollywood. She blows up Hollywood. I still, I still don't even know how I feel about it either. There was something that came to me, watching it this time where I was, because it cannot be said enough how strange and disorienting like this final sequence is. And it they obviously play it comically. There's the piece of it also. This was made between, my understanding is that this was made between suicide attempts by Natalie Wood. Like she had tried to kill herself before
Jesus Christ.
This film. She would try to kill herself again. There's like it's insane. Like the stuff kind of happening there is really like makes it all even more fucking weird and disorienting. But the thing that I do like about it, or the thing that sort of keeps me thinking about it in a way that I feel like I'm coming around to being on board with, is that the way that she does sort of find herself, like I cannot think of another instance where someone sort of gets themselves back through trying and failing to kill themselves. Like it's a very like strange, like it's very comical, and then it's like, oh, there's kind of her stubbornness. We're sort of seeing her stubbornness, and we're sort of seeing her gumption, and the way that she's playing it is kind of like, oh fuck, this is kind of how she was at the beginning of the movie a little bit, huh? And then she almost has that, like after this, enough time passes and enough attempts happen where she's like, this is just not happening. It sort of very slowly gets her to a point where you can see in her face her kind of think, hey, wait a minute, there I am again. And like, it's done in a way that like, because I think of Natalie Wood, I really buy it and find it charming. And then I think it's almost just like she has to be shaped like that kind of act, that like such a final act, and kind of the clumsiness of trying to kind of do this and then realizing, wait a minute, fuck all of this. Like I'm blowing it all up. Like I kind of, because of how we know who she is in the beginning, and because I think they keep enough of that behavior of her running through the film, where like we see kind of the way she smokes cigarettes is still there, the way that she is sort of still scrawling her graffiti at these times. We see the rebelliousness in her face.
I'm gonna dump a dump truck on him.
Truck, yeah. Like we kind of see that. We see those bits of her. Like she loses herself, but we still, I think, through it all, sort of see these little bits of her and her trying to figure out how to get out of it. But she's just the shock of everything that's been happening, kind of just the lack of options, it sort of takes her going to that extreme, and then through this very strange set of failed actions, kind of, it's almost like her shaking herself out of it is kind of how I take it. And once she does, we're back to kind of that weird tone of the beginning. Like, I mean, the whole movie's got a weird tone, but that specifically weird tone of the beginning where it's like, fuck this, and she blows up the house, and then literally like someone's walking.
The shot of her blowing up the house, by the way, is incredible.
It's
the
incredible.
Widescreen frame of her walking away. She's like hundreds of feet away, and the background is a massive practical explosion goes off. It fucking launches.
It's crazy. Like she's just walking down the beach. It just blows up. And then someone kind of walks by and says, like, well, what happened? And she's like, someone declared war, and tosses her coffee cup in the ocean. And that's like the fucking end of the movie. And you're like, what? It's so strange. Weird, but I love it. I do kind of love it.
I love it. It totally works for me. I think it kind of made me, and now I don't know if it would just, if I rewatch this, it would make the whole movie work for me in that sense. Like just the tonal changes and the whiplash effect. I don't know if that's entirely just sold because I love these last 10 minutes. But what I will say is I think the pacing of these last 10 minutes is very interesting and kind of works with the film, just given that it's so depressing, right? It's like she's cornered into this idea that the only way out is to kill herself. And so you're going to get this big melodramatic, miserable Hollywood ending. And you're like, okay, this is, it's about it's a warning that this is where it will lead, this kind of, the evil in this industry. And then more and more as the phone rings, as people show up, it gets funnier and funnier the way that these things happen, to the point where the last one, I think, is she accidentally burns herself on the stove because she hits the wrong knob. And it's just, and then hits her head before she gets out of the oven again. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, this is obviously escalating and changing tone purposely. It is, of course, whether it works for you. But I think it's this, it's kind of what you said, Katie. It's this thing where she's convinced that it's either kill yourself or fight. And I like the irony that she's taking on this rebellious nature and going to put a wrench in the wheels of the industry, and there's nothing they can do about it because she's contractually obligated to work and they want money from her. So now that she's figured that out, she's like, all right, well, fuck it. I'm just going to be a real hassle to deal with then. And I think that's kind of, obviously, given all the misery we've seen, it is a very abrupt and lighthearted ending, but I think I don't know.
If they're going to go for it, I would have liked one more shot of where they do like the Showgirls ending, and it's like her walking towards like the Warner's lot with like a gasoline tank or something.
Hell yeah, that'd be great. I am so on board with that, 100%.
I love it. I'm just going to pretend that is the actual final. I mean, it's hard to beat the final shot that we get with the explosion, but I'm going to pretend there's that little extra bit that they throw in there for us.
Yeah,
Christopher Plummer needs his comeuppance for doing all of the evil vibes. Because I actually did think that the insane villainous performance we talked about in The Silent Partner that he does was going to be like the craziest extent he ever went in his career, and it was not.
Yeah.
No, my whole thing was I was just like, he is scarier in this movie than he is in The Silent Partner, and that should tell you something.
And he's scary in that movie.
He's scary in that movie.
As a guy who dresses up like Santa and just like looks awesome and just terrorizes Elliot Gould, he's horrifying.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't think I would have. I think I would have been too miserable if she just stuck her head in the oven, killed herself, and we called it a day. I would have been like, okay, that's a little much for me, I think, after giving all this time into this experience. But yeah, so I don't know. It worked for me. I do understand the whiplash effect, and it seems to be on purpose, but it really is abrupt. So it's going to be how you handle it. But I don't know.
Yeah,
for me,
I loved it. Part of this apparently. I would say they apparently shot different versions of the ending, and they just had no idea what they were going to go with, and they just were like, I don't know, I guess we'll. So part of the confusion is deliberate. Part of the confusion is just we aren't really sure what we're doing.
Gotcha. I was so excited about it. I went outside and told my brothers that I just explained the last 5 minutes because I thought it was so funny.
Oh my god!
So I enjoyed it very much.
A whole bunch of brothers now know the ending of Inside Daisy Clover.
Yeah, with no other context. Just great.
But yeah, I think we are going a little long here, so we should wrap things up. We should do the reductive rating round here on Inside Daisy Clover, which for you, Katie, is where we remove all the words and all the nuance and reduce the movie to a number between 1 and 5. But it's also become closing statements or any lines or scenes we might not have hit while we were talking about it. But yeah, for me on first pass, this is going to get a high 3 for me. I do want to come back to it because there's a lot that I'm thinking about, especially knowing the entire structure of it now and having, we had a lot of positive things to say about this movie. And and a high 3 is a positive rating, but I don't know, there's just part of me that goes, something so discombobulating about the actual experience and the whiplash of watching it that I could not believe what I was watching or if it worked. Part of me was just questioning, does this work, for like half the movie, basically. I actually do think, after talking about it, that like a lot more of it works than doesn't work. And there is a lot to be interested in here. I mean, I think that the directing by Robert Mulligan, and I think that and his producing partner Pakula, they had good instincts and like wanting to tell these very socially and politically conscious and, you know, critiques that they had. And this was like, you know, as far as telling a dark Hollywood insider story, you know, this had to have been very disturbing at the time, especially also weaponizing studio money and the lavish studio look in terms of the cinematography and the production design and the costume design, and like to kind of convince people in, like, come watch the young girl from West Side Story in a Hollywood musical, and then to include scenes of just Christopher Plummer and Robert Redford both being, you know, charmingly predatory in a very realistic and abusive and evil fashion, in a way that really critiques the, you know, the assembly line of how Hollywood picks up poor children and manufactures them into stars in order to control and exploit. And, you know, there's a history of them doing this. And so, yeah, I think that though there's a whiplash effect between whether the movie, you know, can be a 50s Stars Born style classical industry melodrama, or whether it is a depressingly cynical new Hollywood satire of the same, there's a lot of disorientation that's used productively. And it's very beautifully made. And even when it does get a bit mechanical and determined in terms of really pushing its points that it's bringing up about addiction and suicide, and obviously even addressing fucking pedophilia in Hollywood in 1965, which feels wild. You know, the evil vibes of the Plummer performance and the way that it uses shadow and the way that it uses the studio lot is, I think, really well mixed with Wood's performance, which does feel very raw. It does feel like she had some time to hone this kind of teen rebel melodrama performance, that she had had a long time with that kind of character. And then to just portray such a harrowing sort of like loss of innocence that she experiences here, and as sort of a, you know, someone who loses their identity and loses their voice, and does so in such a obviously literal way in that incredible sound recording sequence as well. Like I guess that's kind of what I wanted a little bit more out of the movie. I think there's so many moments where it really hits, where the form really matches up with the industry critique. And there was part of me that was kind of like, oh, I would have been interested in actually seeing more of that, rather than, you know, circling back to the classical style, and which it does so many times throughout, where it does just kind of go briefly, we are in a lush romance with Robert Redford, and obviously we want that betrayal and we want that effect as well. But yeah, I don't know. Part of me wonders too if it maybe just could have also, like Stars Born, been really fucking long, and they could have had more stuff in there. Maybe that would have actually done some more for me. But regardless, the main sticking point for me was how the ending is going to play on round two, because on round one I was like writing in my notes like, what the fuck is going on?
What happened?
I was like, am I watching the right copy? Am I watching like an alternate version? Like then that for me was where the caricatureness just went maybe a little extreme, where I went, I did not expect the really harrowing, dark industry critique to just have a series of false slapstick suicides taking place, and then to end on such an empowering note that feels strangely like it doesn't come out of nowhere, because again, Katie was mentioning like the rebellious streak is consistently laid out throughout, but it does feel like the fastest switch a movie has ever flipped to try to be like, we're going to go from one to the other. And it does. I don't know that it lands it. It is not graceful, but it is also, once again, still beautifully shot and kind of amazing to watch. And her performance is great. So I don't know. It's that's why, despite one of the weirdest endings I've ever seen that I don't think works, I am still going to give this a high 3, because there's so much about it to like otherwise. Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I didn't realize there were certain moments that were supposed to be satirical because of how miserable the narrative actually is. And I think the ending made me want to just rewatch to see if I was kind of misreading tone every once in a while. But I do think that if I'm if I'm really being honest, I think that they had a little bit of trouble balancing those two things here and there. Sometimes the melodrama really does take over, and I just feel like I'm watching a very, very serious drama from this time period. And then there's moments where I feel, Plummer is so over the top and honest about being such a piece of shit that I'm like, this has to be a satire. So it is kind of strange, and that does give you a little bit of a whiplash effect. I still do love the ending, though. I gotta say, it was just like, I couldn't believe what I was watching, and
it's singular
because I think my brain was doing what I said, where I was like, oh, she's not just going to kill herself after all this, right? Like, I don't just get to see Natalie Wood stick her head in an oven and that's it. We're calling it a day. Like, I really thought that that'd be too much. And so when it turns into this completely outlandish, surreal, and ridiculous, almost action movie ending, I was just completely on board because I didn't want to see the other end of the spectrum. So
yeah, that's true.
It was, and yeah, I think Redford is fantastic. I think everybody in this is fantastic. But it is an interesting thing to ask a big star, and I guess he was starting out, but just a very charming star, to play this kind of character and still be kind of likable in moments. And then it's like the movie kind of, they make him likable, and then instantly you're reminded, no, this is what he's doing though. Remember, he's dating a teenager, and you're like, oh yeah, fuck this guy. And it
is a brave role to take pre-stardom too.
Oh,
I think,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
this is the kind of movie where it's kind of uncomfortable and it might actually turn an audience on your image, but he's also clearly weaponizing his image as like a matinee idol character, and so it's very interesting. But it is worth noting, this is pre Robert Redford stardom. Yeah, I don't even think he had a leading role yet.
That's crazy, and I think he does a great job. You can just tell that he's going to be a star right from the bat in this film. He's just he's crazy good.
Oh yeah,
he basically steals every scene that he's in. So
yeah, agreed. And I do think her being an adult. I mean, Natalie Wood has a very young look to her anyway, but her being an adult and then having the pacing be pretty slow does give a cool effect of her aging, like more than it's actually being shown. I think it's only 2 years, and it honestly, just with all the abuse, like I said in the beginning, it feels like a decade is being spanned over here. So I think that kind of works, and her maturity that she'd have as an actress at that point does really apply well to the movie and the character. And then I think the last thing is, I agree with you, Josh. I wanted more, like, if you're going to do an ending like that, or do the scene that almost reminded you of like Blowout or something, if you're going to do something like that, I would like more of that sprinkled in throughout the whole movie, and not just in those two kind of big moments. But those two big moments are fantastic and very memorable. It's just, it felt like they could have had more thriller comedy.
Turn the shooting day into
elements.
A nightmare. Don't wait to post-production.
Yeah. And so anyway, yeah. And so and I do want the sequel where she burns all of Hollywood to the ground. That'd just be great.
Yeah.
It starts off with her just on the beach. Yeah, like we said, gasoline tank. Here we go. Let's get it done. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a strong 3 for now, but I could see this getting the upgrade because I find it to be very, very interesting.
For you, Katie?
I mean, this is a 5 for me because this movie is
hell yeah.
It's like, yeah, no, like, I mean, this is a movie where when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this is really fucking good and really weird and really, like, there's so much about it that I don't even know what to think of it or if it works, but that's why I'm drawn to it, because that those types of where everything is the tone it's going for, but then it doesn't put enough distance from the sort of stylings of what it's doing for it to be very clear a lot of the time. And I find that, watching it a second time, a lot more of that became apparent to me, kind of the choices that are being made to sort of make that distinction, but it's still being done within a movie that looks like a sort of beautiful, a picture melodrama that is, almost could feel what's the word I'm looking for? A little trite, but it's not, to me. Like it's even just, I'm stumbling over my words because it's really hard to explain. I mean, unless you've seen it, like it's that really weird tension where it is trying to do this thing, but within a form and within a kind of mode that makes it hard to to navigate, I think. And it's a real gamble, I think, because of that, in ways that I think, can pay off and not pay off even at the same time sometimes. Like, I think sometimes I'm like, oh, this is working, but also it's not at all. Like, there's a lot of simultaneous stuff going on. And it's a movie that watching it for the second time sort of solidified it as like, oh, this is like one of those, like, what I sort of have called like a DNA movie, like movies that I'm like, oh, I'm this is like super fucking important to me. Like, this is going to be one of those movies for me, isn't it? And like, that's kind of what it felt like, where, the all of the sort of meta commentary on itself and the way that it sort of is trying to be this it's such an insidious movie. It's the prettiest, like, looking insidious movie I can think of. It's just where you're in this movie about fame that is beautiful and epic looking, but it's just so empty, and it's so, like, it's just kind of about the stripping away of this one girl's identity. And it's a movie that I feel like I'll sort of be revisiting throughout my life and continuing to contend with those same things, and the things that kind of make it, questionable whether it works or not, or the things that I love to engage with about it. I think, and I think that the other thing, I just want to sort of talk a little bit more about Natalie Wood, because I really think that, like, she was someone who in her sort of journals and diaries or whatever, sort of seemed to have a self-awareness of, like, her not wanting to be defined by, there was sort of a thing that she wrote after Marilyn Monroe died, where she sort of acknowledged that, like, oh, I can see myself becoming that kind of figure, and I don't want to be that. Like, I want to sort of fight and live, and, like, I want to, sort of figure out how to live a good life. And I think that, between that and her kind of saying after her first divorce from, or her, the end of her first marriage with Robert Wagner, had said it was as if she didn't really know who she was. And she said it was as if I were the total of all the parts I had played, and I had no idea who I really was. And I think there's so much of that being kind of that's present in this film, as well as, I know that the film itself isn't so much about sort of her, Daisy's craft or even her love of singing. It's really not about that at all, which is another thing that's kind of off-putting about the movie, potentially. But I think a lot about her performance in this movie, and about how incredible I think it is. And I think that she often throughout her career didn't really get a lot of credit for her work. And I think that she was often disparaged in the press about her acting abilities. And I find that really unfortunate, because I think what she's doing here is really marrying that kind of presentational style that she can have, that I think is sort of can be a flat affect to it, that I think people can sort of mistake as being bad, but I think it's almost more of like an old-fashioned style with like those sort of harrowing, like, she's always so good when she's like on the edge of a nervous breakdown, like Splendor in the Grass. She's incredible in that, when she's
so good in that movie. I highly recommend people follow
incredible movie, and like the emotional spaces that she's acting out within that, I think, are just as modern and just as raw and just as tangible, as sort of her contemporaries that are coming out of, who are being sort of put in a more modern category and a more like sort of quote unquote method category or whatever. And I feel like she kind of got boxed into this idea that, she was sort of more old fashioned in her acting, and they think that it makes her kind of hard to pin down. And I think that people mistook a lot of that for not being very good. And I just think that she's really, really remarkable in this. And I love that the film really meant a lot to her. And she, I was watching there's a documentary about Alan, is it Pacula? How do I say this man's name?
I've heard it a million different ways. They're all great.
Okay,
everyone knows him. He's a legend.
I'm going with Pacula because it's the most fun to say. So there was a documentary about. He is pretty cool. It was a documentary about him, and they sort of touch a little bit on Inside Daisy Clover, and the three things they say about it are like Christopher Plummer's being interviewed in this, and he's just like, "Oh my God, what was I doing with that performance in that movie?" Ugh. Like, he was just like, at the time, I thought it was what I was doing was brilliant. Now I look back on it, and I'm just like, "Oh Lord, kid, what were you thinking?" And then with Robert Redford, they have there's an exchange that him and the interviewer have where he's just like, "Do you want to start with Inside Daisy Clover?" And Robert Redford's like, "Do you?" and starts laughing. So like, it's there's not a lot of goodwill clearly for it.
Wow.
I did. Sorry to briefly interrupt you. I did hear a Robert Redford interview where he wasn't really speaking about the movie, but he did say that he enjoyed filming it because of Natalie Wood, which was interesting. Apparently, he really liked her as a performer. But yeah, he wasn't really speaking on the movie. So yeah,
no, he was just like, I don't really want it.
How actors have to do press for a movie that they know is like not doing well is always so interesting.
Oh my God. Oh my God. It's talk about dissociating.
Even though I think everyone can be proud of the work. Like I have across the board, like maybe some of the writing is a little caricatured in spots, but I think the performances are selling them. So, you know. Yeah,
and I think that, you know, the only other thing they sort of talked about was like that Natalie Wood fought super, super hard for this role, and that she was always really disturbed that she didn't get the recognition that she thinks that she should have for it. Like she really like put a lot in, you know, obviously, I mean, you can see put a lot into it. And I think that, you know, and also Gavin Lambert, they became very good friends, and he ended up writing a 2004 biography on her. He became her biographer. So like that's awesome. Really, really great thing too. But super, super rambly, super, super sorry, but I just love this movie for all the reasons, all the positive, the negative, the positive and negative, the question marks, all of it. It's all super engaging and stuff that I always want to be kind of wrestling with when I see it. And it's a movie that really sticks with me and that I can't sort of shake after I watch it. There's the times I've seen it, it's been like a, you know, it's taken days for me to fully like sort of shake it off. I always love when something can do that.
Yeah, there's nothing better than a movie that you love, even because of the weird things that you maybe agree don't work about it. It's one of the best things that you can fiving a movie that you're like, this is not perfect, but fuck you.
Yes, exactly. It's an alchemy. It's an alchemy it's a very specific alchemy that I'm always just like, give me this over the perfect movie. I want the stuff that I'm like, I still don't know what the fuck I think of this in the 15th viewing, but I am always like, but I love it, but I don't know what I think, but I love it. Like,
it's a power movie.
I love it.
One of those movies. Absolutely. Feels great.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, I think that is going to wrap it up here for Inside Daisy Clover. We are going to be right back, and we're going to be talking about the B-movie side of the rags to riches climb story, and a little bit more from the psychopathic side of things, the more controlling side, where you actually have some power and you're using it. We're going to be talking about Rat Fink. Stick around.
Tell me how much you hate me.
I hate you, Ronnie. Ronnie, leave me alone.
Really? How do you describe a motion picture like this? You don't. You see it.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Rat Fink, the 1965 American, once again, rags to riches showbiz musical melodrama, but thriller film, serial killer film, all kinds of things. Written
more like a thriller,
and directed by James Landis as a star vehicle for a then hopeful burgeoning actor whose career never really took off, named I'm going to mess this up too, Shuler Hayden. I think that's what we're going to go with. Who, from what we understand, had ambitions of movie stardom and put about $200,000 of his own money into a movie where he essentially got to play a lonely singer trying to achieve success and rise in the industry by any means necessary. And he goes to some pretty dark places. But this is our first time talking about the cult filmmaker James Landis, whose primary claim to fame, I think, is in discovering legendary Hungarian cinematographer Vilmos Zsigmond, who shot The Deer Hunter, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Blowout, Long Goodbye, Deliverance, McCabe, Mrs. Miller, among many others. We've talked about him a ton on this show, one of the masters of light and shadow, and they here were both trying to make low budget exploitation movies around this time in the early to mid 1960s. And the only other movie, because we did it as a virtual patron watch, which we do with our patrons at the end of the month. We once watched Sight Unseen. I don't even remember why we picked it exactly. I think it maybe even because it was super short. We were like, oh, this sounds like a short thriller and everybody loves it. We watched a movie called The Sadist and we fucking loved it. We were like, so God damn, what? It's so tense. It's so sweaty. It is like it's essentially a chamber thriller about a group of friends who have car troubles on their way to a Dodgers game, and they end up pulling into like a mechanic, and it ends up just being a junkyard, and they just end up terrorized and held hostage in this like rusty junkyard by what are essentially these like Badlands or Natural Born Killer style, Psycho Bonnie and Clyde couple, and it's just such a nasty squirm-inducing movie that very much took kind of like old school naive like 50s domestic archetypal characters, who a bunch of guys getting into the car and heading to the diner and going to the Dodgers game, and we're like, what if those characters ran into the kind of cruel and evil places that the new Hollywood and nihilistic sort of 70s exploitation movies were eventually going to go. I think when we watched it, we were like a little bit of Bonnie and Clyde, but like if Bonnie and Clyde like drove down the road a little bit and they arrived in like The Hills Have Eyes or something like that is what that movie kind of feels like. It's like such a crazy movie in that regard. And also, I will say, Zsigmond is like half the reason it has the power that it does. His focus on geography and psychological perspective and mood, and like it has so much intensely violent atmosphere and power to it. And so it's cool to see James Landis and Vilmos Zsigmond once again teaming up here. Though this time they are applying that incredibly dark tone and atmosphere to what is a mix of, similarly to Daisy Clover, like a cynical rags to riches, like rock star industry melodrama, and also merging it a bit with that like dirty teen delinquency or like youth rebel kind of movie. I did laugh at the idea that this guy, Shuler Hayden, he really did view this as like, dude, I'm gonna be like James Dean, I'm gonna be like Warren Beatty, Marlon Brando. What if all those guys were like wrapped into one and we shot a movie for $200,000? But also, I was just such a frightening and off-putting character that like would, I think he had the opposite effect of what happened with Redford, which is that Redford played a role that seemed like, it would be risk putting people off of him before he had even become a leading actor.
But he was just too powerfully charming that
he was so charming in the actual scenes that everyone kind of, we even said it. We were like, we took away the opposite impression. Like you forget that he is marrying a 15-year-old when he's marrying a 15-year-old in that movie, because you're like, he's the coolest guy ever. In this one, you're like, no, this guy is like, get me away from this guy is like the impression I think you have right from the fucking beginning of the movie, which is cool.
Yeah. But I totally. But I also like that in the first 2 minutes, it has that setup of just like, he's a young boy just down on his luck. He's homeless. He's got his guitar in his bag. He's running
train
rails.
Hopping.
Yeah, he's train hopping. He's trying to just find maybe a job or a city where he can, find some type of money, maybe busk or something. And so in that sense, you're on board with, you're kind of familiar and on board with the story that is about to be told. But then, he comes across a farm and meets an older woman, and instantly you're like, oh, this is very different. He's not just going from rags to riches in this kind of like a boy has a dream kind of way. He is willing, even before he really understands the industry, to do whatever it takes to survive. And it's not really survive. It's more like thrive and take advantage of people rather than just survival. He does things that are purely sadistic and not just so that he can, get a loaf of bread and move on with his day. He's not doing that.
Yeah, I just think that like he is you kind of sort of your takeaway or not takeaway, but the way that you interpret him as you sort of slowly realize, or actually very quickly realize, oh,
Yeah.
this kind of drifter character is not really who I thought that he was. You sort of end up seeing Lonnie as like this guy with like the world's biggest chip on his shoulder, and like that he's not even trying to become famous because he like has this dream of becoming famous. It seems like he has a guitar and he can sing a song, but like he almost seems to wander into like these situations and almost just sort of sees an insane opportunity, which, you know, I mean, I don't even know if I would call it an opportunity, because who else would think of the thing that he comes up with?
You make your own opportunities in this world. That's what I think you need to understand.
Yes, you make your own opportunities, but like you end up sort of like in this place where you're like, oh, this guy just needs to be sort of in a sort of status position, financial position of ultimate power because of the sort of chip that he has on his shoulder. So it's not even that he has these dreams. And when you kind of end up sort of realizing that, it makes the stuff that he does, specifically with a certain scene that happens about, I don't know, 20 minutes into the movie, you know, and sort of the actions that he takes, even more hard to take in, because it's not even coming from this sort of place of like unchecked ambition. It's coming from this sort of like, I am so driven by my self-loathing and my need to be on top of something because I need to stop. You know, this is the only way that I'm gonna not be reminded of sort of where I come from. That's sort of getting into a lot of sort of stuff with what the character ends up being, but I just find that piece of it so.
No, I mean, I think it's a good place to start, because it's so apparently it's kind of him. Like that's just it. This is a star. Like that's kind of the key to this, because one of the things worth noting about The Sadist as well, I guess, is that movie was produced in part by a man named Arch Hall Sr., who was funding it essentially to make his son Arch Hall Jr. a movie star. And they eventually did do a collaboration with like the trash filmmaker Ray Dennis Steckler as well, who we just talked about recently with the shot on video filmmaker Charles Prinion, because he brought on Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies, which is a title I just love saying any opportunity I get. But they also did another movie together, Wild Guitar, which is another sort of musician thing where actually the father and son duo play like a young hotshot musician and the record producer who like gives them that shot. And so like this was a kind of popular movie to make around the time. And it was especially a kind of popular movie because you could make it cheaply and you could then, market whoever you wanted as kind of a star. And so I guess that, I mean, for James Landis, clearly this is, you know, he felt that like being paid by people with money to make a movie that served their dreams of stardom was like a viable path to becoming a filmmaker, just on like a logistical level. So he did it. But I think that this is the movie where they did that, where that production model actually seeps its way into the story, because the Shuler Hayden character and Shuler Hayden himself, you know, he put the cash up to make himself a movie star. He clearly wanted to do this in some way. And he has like kind of, I guess, like he has just a weirdly desperate determination, but also is kind of casual and kind of there's a self-loathing quality to it. And from what I understand, because I think Katie, you might have written about this for your zine, right?
I did.
His daughter, who's his daughter? Ursula Hayden, like one of the wrestlers, right?
One of the wrestlers from the real life Glow in the 80s. And she,
like that's cool.
So like it's I mean, she, you know, was sort of had more of a spotlight on herself than I think her.
Yeah, she became a star. You know?
Yeah, but like, you know, the Blu-ray that was sort of released of it, that was what they had done when it was rediscovered and everything. The only special features on it really are her talking about her dad, who, you know, ended up in like Hawaii and becoming a recluse after, like, soon after this didn't pan out. And then he was going to like, his life is just, it's just so weird. Like,
and then he died in a plane crash?
in a massive plane crash, the 1978 PSA flight 182 plane crash, where 144 people died, and he was one of them. And he was apparently planning to make another go of it in the industry. But like her dad, or, you know, not her dad, Ursula Hayden describes her dad as kind of being like Lonnie. like,
that's crazy.
Which is like, oh, what? Wait a minute, what? You know,
hopefully to a less sociopathic degree.
I'm like that. That's not really what you want to be hearing. I think besides the sort of more psychopathic piece of it, that like in terms of that, what he wanted and what he was aiming for, that like and there is that. It is true that that desperation comes through, and the irony of him getting a lot more famous in this film than like he himself ever did. Like I think of the scene where like
this movie bombed.
This movie totally bombed, and then it literally like was lost. So like it's it's just there was nothing that came of this, and he only I think he had a bit part in like Riot on Sunset Strip like a few years later or a couple of years later, and then that's it in terms of movie credits that he had. So this really
it's crazy. It feels like this guy is like bearing his soul on the screen is what I was kind of getting at.
Yeah, there is a desperation to it for sure. And like when you see scenes where like he hears himself on the radio and like he sort of turns he looks at the group of girls who are sort of in the parking lot that he's sitting in, kind of just like making sure that they sort of see him, and then they all come rushing over screaming and like wanting his autograph and stuff. I'm like, oh dude, this is the closest you're ever gonna come to like that thing actually happening. It's just like all of that is in there, and it's kind of like and then this guy is like horrible. There's that piece too.
Yes.
So there's a lot going on there for sure.
Yeah, I mean we see him commit adultery and attempted murder in the first 15 minutes, I think it is, something like that. This dude establishes the kind of character he is pretty quickly.
Well, and I'm going to say for me personally, this struck so many different notes, not because I'm a crazy sociopath who has dreams of stardom, but I was just like, the vibe of a movie like this is something that just like immediately, like I love the like poor drifter vibes. I love the fact that he's like eating an apple and the lyrical sort of black and white imagery of him train hopping. I love the mournful, soulful, like Bob Dylan era of like folk rock that they're trying to like capture a little bit, like the I picked up my guitar and left home, and now I'm riding the rails on my own.
Which, by the way, I think, and I someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking at the credits, and I think it's the song that they were credited, but that's Hayden. Hayden actually wrote and recorded that song. So
they're good songs.
Yeah, the one in the beginning is his song, I believe, and it is his voice throughout the movie. And like, I love that song in the beginning. And it's like what you said, Josh. Like, this was a movie where, like, with Inside Daisy Clover, I'm like, I don't know. When it first starts, the first like minute of Rat Fink, I'm like,
I was in.
Fuck yes, I'm all in on this. And then once you get to the Tommy Loomis scene and that insanity happens, I'm like, okay, no, I'm like, as if I couldn't be more in. I am super duper in. I'm super duper in. Like that, it is such a strange. It's like that mix of sort of a little bit of exploitation, a little bit of like the other, like you said, juvenile delinquency trends at the time. It's it's creeping in on this stuff going on the fringes of sort of American filmmaking, that it's a mix of stuff. I think about these other, The Sadist, and like I sort of wrote about feeling like the film Private Property has a similar vibe, where there's a specific combination of stuff where that feels a bit transgressive, like it's testing things out a bit. The filmmaking is a little bit it feels more not quite handheld, but because it's not handheld, but it feels more, there's more of an immediacy. There's more of a kind of like, it feels more influenced by things that are going on, around the world, but in a low budget kind of like, genre fare sense. And I love the films from the 60s and like the late 50s that are really playing around with that strange mix of
there's a whole bunch of things.
There's a ton of movies that fall into this from like the 60s period. Another one from 65 is Who Killed Teddy Bear, which is like one of my favorite movies. It's that like very, it's like exploitation, transgressive. What do we do? What is this movie? It's kind of a thriller. He's also a drifter. It's sort of like in that kind of, con artist type of thing too. There's a lot that it's playing around with.
That's the thing I really wanted to hit on too.
Yeah.
Like it's so like the movies that I was kind of thinking about while watching this. One of the early ones I was thinking about was HUD with Paul Newman, because there's such a sad sack, especially when he goes back to the farm. And there's the whole sequence with the parents and everything. I was like, that is a scene that like Paul Newman in HUD might have had with his parents. But then I was thinking of like around the time that this would have came out, I was thinking about, you know, like the way that the coldness of this character, the way that he becomes a drifter and turns into this sort of hot heartthrob sensation as he pursues this sort of transactional rise through the industry by doing sort of like sadistic con man methods at a certain point, which we will get into the very specifics of. I started to think more about like those like ruthless hitman B-noirs, like Murder by Contract or Blast of Silence.
So good, yeah.
Like those were things I was thinking about. Roger Corman's A Bucket of Blood, about the wannabe artist who becomes like a beatnik serial killer. I think, Katie, you mentioned it in your writing on the movie in the zine. You mentioned Nightmare Alley. Fallen Angel was another one I was thinking about, but like that noir era of where you had like a sleazy 2-bit hustler who rolls into town on 5 cents, and he's like, how can I turn this 5 cents into like being married to the richest woman in town, and the consequences of that, and the dark decision making that goes into that. And I think that I was surprised at how quickly it makes that transition in such a bleak exploitation fashion, because you know, like one of the earliest things we see him doing, as James was mentioning, was we see him landing on this unsuspecting sort of middle-aged woman, and, you know, immediately weaponizing his like dirty young man charm, where, you know, he looks homeless, shirtless, he's got the jeans, he's trying to do both like Streetcar Named Desire Brando, but like with a little bit of like the Dean boyishness quality. And he's throwing the smiles around. He's like, hi, can you tell me which way to the highway, ma'am? You know, and here's this woman who's like the first time like a man has rolled into town and talked to her in like months or something, is what it kind of feels like. You know, she's lonely. She's almost living in like a Douglas Sirk movie or something, you can imagine. And here's the handsome young man who rolls into town. His scratch needs to get bandaged up, and he uses it as an opportunity to seduce her. And he's going to take her out. So she goes to make herself pretty for him. Cuts to that horrible shot of her wallet being stolen, and he has disappeared from the table that she left him at, and she's just a sobbing, devastated mess. Hard cut, and we never see her again. Yeah, and like that's it. Like that, like it's such a cruel movie in that way.
So you're like, oh, this is going to be a mean one, and then also he leaves the wallet out. He leaves it out for her, so that like she. I
emptied it, by the way.
Just in case you're wondering, you don't have to go look for your purse. Like your money's gone. Like it's. Oh my God. It's just like, oh, so this is going to be okay. I don't know where we're going after this.
Right after making her feel bad for like betraying her husband and everything as well. And, and preying on her loneliness, and that shot of them holding each other. But it's like, you know, the shot is framed from like through the door frame in the other room, where it's like, you know, his mind is clearly elsewhere. And I was like, God damn. I knew what I was in for, like, pretty much right away.
And then again, like his whole performance after this, as he's going from, you know, place to place, like the next thing is him going into the city. And as he's walking around and looking, there's nothing there. It's like he's a soulless man. Like there's no emotion. He's just kind of looking for the next thing that he can take advantage of and get something.
He's observing social trends.
And yes,
in a very alien way.
In a more modern comparison, he kind of reminded me of the Nightcrawler character, at least in the beginning, where, you know how Jake Gyllenhaal's character, he's they don't show a lot. They don't show where he comes from or anything. They're just like, he's trying to get into a place. He sees a guy. The security guard goes up to him. It implies that he does something to the security guard, and he takes his watch. But there's like a lack of emotion and real care to it all. And he has the same kind of performance in this next scene, where after he picks up after he gets the money and everything, he goes to the city and he sees Tommy Loomis and his band in this giant like dance hall or whatever. And again,
everybody loves Tommy Loomis. The girls are freaking out. The auditorium is the twist is happening left and right.
Oh yeah,
you know?
it's electric. But again, he's just doing nothing. Like he's just kind of looking at everybody, taking in the information, and then even
well, he's
when
more
he
interested in what the
decides-
execs are saying on the sideline, right? Where they're like, "Do you really discover this guy pumping gas?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, that's all. You know, all you need is animal magnetism for all the girls to want to follow you, and you need a voice, and that's it. You know." Bam! I have a hit star, and you can just see like the light bulb click in his head. He's like, "Oh, it's that easy, eh?"
Yeah, and he also
the plan is
he has
forming.
this.
It would be a shame if your hit new star with one single under his belt were to be lit on fire.
Yeah, which he also again does with like no emotion. He doesn't seem to enjoy
The
the things he's
suddenness of
doing.
how that plays out, like the choreography of it is insane. It's the most
He is a
shocking
professional
thing.
hitman. Yeah, I don't know how he got away with
I'm
that.
like, convinced. I'm like, you must have done this before. Like with knowing the little bit of who you are and like just the casual, like you come up with this plan immediately and then you just execute it like it's nothing. And you he's right there when it happens and he just smooth.
He just
gets
watches.
Out, walks.
He doesn't even like what
feels
oh
nothing.
my
Walks
God.
away, and
And again, it doesn't come from a place.
And you don't expect it. It just happens.
You
Like
don't
it's like
expect
you see him watching Tommy Loomis perform. He goes outside right after the performance, and all of the girls are just like screaming at him for the autographs, like he's like Elvis or a Beatle or something. And he's obviously instantly jealous. And he you're like, oh, this is going to come into play on like a couple scenes. He's going to get motivated to do something. Literally, he gets into his car. He goes, "Hey, does this car smell like gasoline?" A close up of a match being lit, thrown into the car, and the guy is on fire, screaming for a minute. Yeah. And you get the close up of his third degree like burn scars forming already. All of his fans like in hysteria, being like, "What the fuck is happening?" And this is one of the few moments it does switch to the handheld for the chaos of just like we're almost witnessing like this like a photo news journalism of the event or something. And it's like, yeah. But the casual nature with which he makes that decision off screen without our being led into it is so psychopathic and makes it so shocking.
Yeah.
So chill about it. And like, I think that it also kind of makes sort of where his character goes and everything a little bit surprising as well, because at that point you're like, oh, this guy just feels nothing ever. You're also thinking like, oh, he's gonna, okay, we know enough about him to be like, he's gonna ingratiate himself. He's gonna like sort of scheme and plot to sort of take this guy's spot, and then it's like, nope, he just lights him on fire immediately.
And again, it's interesting because it's almost for this blinded gain. Like he knows his talents, he understands that clearly he's a musician and can sing, but he doesn't have that passion for it. It really is just, he's looking at Tommy and he's going, look at all those people that look up to him and I could take advantage of. He's not like, look at how he expresses himself or anything like that. But it is interesting to still have his character know he's a good singer. Like he has that kind of human creative aspect to him, but he doesn't use it for that. He's only using it for power. And it's a really cool
one of my
twist on it
favorite
all.
scenes is right after burning this guy. We do hear on the radio report that it wasn't to death, but it might as well have been to death. He ruined his career. He fucking like absolutely, gave him third degree burns all over his body, all over his face. And the shot of him listening to that radio report while like in the dirty motel, and he's like, yeah, he's never gonna sing again. So here's a tribute single to our boy Tommy Loomis. One last one, and they play his "There's One on Every Corner" song that he was just playing. And you can just see him, Hayden, with the switchblade, and his lights are flickering on and off and the spotlight is hitting him. And he just, while listening to the song, he gets up in like one little elegant sort of like tracking shot. He goes over to the mirror, and while listening to the song, he just starts grooving a little bit. He starts, a little bit of get the hips moving, get the shirt opening up, revealing the chest hair, starts practicing the sort of like guitar moves that he would do. He's like, this isn't so hard. I could sing this song, and like that's his reaction to like nearly, killing that guy. Essentially.
He's like,
and the way that the sequence plays out, I don't know how he survived, actually.
No,
honestly.
and also like watching this again, I was like, oh, he lives? Because you never, it really seems like that would
He's a
kill
fireball.
that man. He's literally on fire for a full minute, as you said. And like everyone talks about him like he's dead because, he can't sing anymore and like he's no use to this industry anymore. So like to them, he is dead basically. And we never see him again. So it really feels like he's died.
Yeah, the way this just abandons every character in his rear view that he just absolutely annihilates and goes, okay, well, now on to the next impulsive decision.
Who's
Like,
next?
I'm going to go Hollywood Walk of Fame. I'm going to buy the secondhand, guitar. I'm going to go to Tommy's agent, Mr. Finley, played by Hal Bokar, to audition for the spot that he just violently opened up. And the audition song is maybe the best song in the movie. It's the My Soul Runs Naked with the Wind.
Yeah.
And honestly, his performance of it is good too. I like. I would have. They should release the soundtrack if they can find these songs.
The songs are good. The songs are good.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting too. This is the one moment I didn't know if I was reading it correctly, but it almost seemed like he does have one small moment of kind of like an emotional impact when he listens to his voice back for the first time in a professional setting. They even mentioned something like, he's like, yeah, we put an echo over it so it blends in, and like, they're talking about mixing it. And it actually seems to.
He's like, hey, do I like making music?
Yeah, he's like, yeah. I liked that because it doesn't really pop up again, but there is a moment in his actual performance that seems to say like, oh, that made me feel something for a brief moment. All right, well, back to my.
Well, yeah, no, I think you're spot on, because actually the moment of reckoning he has too is singing lyrics that are too close to his life in the finale, right? Too.
Yes, true. That's
so it actually does come up that like singing a song is like maybe the one time this guy feels like he's actually expressing something honest or something actually in his internal in his soul or something like that. And he's like, I love that with the ending when he's actually furious. He's like, I actually shouldn't be revealing these things.
Yeah.
This is a bad idea.
So actually, maybe he's the most driven musician we've ever seen. Maybe he is the most passionate artist we've ever seen on screen here.
Yeah,
maybe
he's up there. I mean, there's some truth and soul to what he's doing, even though he is mostly interested in the recording contract and being invited out to dinner with both Mr. Finley and his wife Vera, played by Maureen Oate. And I like that they have a very similar line to Inside Daisy Clover too, where they say, "Cheers to Lonnie Price. Long may the cash register ring," which is very similar to the "I'm going to make something out of you, money."
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that piece of it where like you have the acknowledgement of that manufacturing. Like at one point his manager says to him like, you're basically in a threatening way, like you're all publicity and promotional gimmicks. And it's just sort of using that acknowledgement of just like, yeah, no, we made you. And like, that's, what do you actually do for us? Like you come in and we do all the work for you. Cause it's when Lonnie's really bitter about the money being split 50-50. And he's just like, I am literally selling you to the world. And that takes a lot of work.
Yeah, he's like, I'm making you a star. I handle everything. You get up here and you just like sing. Like any guy, we could make any guy come up here and sing the same way. There's other Daisy Clovers like
there's more Tommy
at the end too.
There's always another Tommy Loomis. Like it's and I mean who's next up.
And at a certain point, he's barely doing his job anyway, because he just starts giving in to all of the classic industry poisons. Like he's constantly
the lavish booze-soaked parties.
He's getting drunk to the point where he can't even perform very well anymore. So he does have those kind of like human weaknesses that I like. He doesn't just come off as, the devil enters the industry and then manipulates everyone to everything. He's a very flawed character, even though he knows how to do that kind of manipulation.
It is funny that this is literally the reverse, though, where like the studio exec is like kind of seems like the nice guy who wants to, help everyone make a little bit of money.
I was actually thinking the movie was going to turn more into that. I mean, we'll get to the ending, but I was thinking it was going to more turn into how the industry could take somebody like this and be like, hey, you know what? We need a new label head. Come on down, buddy. You seem cutthroat enough to do this. But yeah, it takes kind of the opposite approach there.
Yeah, but they do a similar thing with his sort of meteoric rise, where it is just kind of like a crossfade montage of like, he's getting into the rock star fitted suits, the shots of the charts going up and the neon venue sides, all the adoring sort of mobs of fans. But the thing that I like that it highlights is throughout, it's his impulsiveness and it's his kind of animal instinct that he is driven by, because I like that they say that Finley says we're looking for that animal magnetism quality, and it's like there's kind of a dark side to that animal magnetism, and for Lonnie, it's like, yeah, he'll spot some legs on a girl in the hall while in the office with Finley, like figuring out the contracts in the background. And I love the way that Zygmunt shoots him, just like literally not paying it, like it's, not paying attention at all to the conversation, being distracted by this frame where it's just like these disembodied legs and heels just distracting him, and him just like smirking and being like, how do I figure out a way out of this boring conversation so I can go talk to Miss Iceland over there and then invite her to my party and make out with her at my party in front of everyone. Even like I literally have one track that I recorded that everyone,
it's like he literally waltzes into this, he sets a guy on fire and then ends up walking into the office and basically being made a star.
Fakes a story about how Mr. Finley said he'd hear me, he
totally like fakes his way into it. And then, so he manages to get to this spot that like not a lot of people get to, and he immediately is so bored. He immediately gets so lazy about everything, and he's driven completely by impulse, and it out of that boredom, because it's like his whole purpose is driven by this, like, I'm this like poor farm boy and it makes me insecure about me being a nobody or whatever, and I gotta be somebody, and then he becomes somebody, but then he doesn't know how to be a quote unquote somebody. He gets nothing out of it, and then it's a total dead end, and so it basically accelerates him on this self-destructive, like, I got just path of more annihilation until he can't even take it anymore. And it's so interesting how he really doesn't have to do much, like he's really everything is being taken care of for him, but he can't even sustain that. Like, I think that you find out towards the end of the movie that only like 5 months have passed. Like this guy really taps out of this whole like experiment very quickly. And it's really sad. It's really sad that like he gets to where he wants to be, and then that's it, and he's got nothing but his self-hatred that he needs to sort of just take out on everyone around him. With
and Shuler Hayden kept trying to make it work.
And he
Dude,
kept
you made the movie that said
I know. So
come on, man, you literally made the movie about how like you get to the top and you still feel empty and ugly inside, and it's just like, I still wanted that shit anyway.
Then he became a recluse because it was empty and ugly when he didn't make it. But you're like, it seems it's very strange that he seems to have that realization, but it's like he just needed to taste it for real before he could deny it. You know what I mean? And it's like this is almost like this movie almost plays out as a fantasy, I guess, in some sense for him.
It is,
and it does. What I guess I like about it too is we were kind of discussing this, but it shows like his self-loathing and like an honest portrayal of how he views himself while going for this dream. Obviously, it's an exaggerated version. I would imagine.
The fact that you make your star vehicle like this ugly and harrowing and kind of just disturbing to watch and like unlikable is, it's a testament to the artistry of it. I understand why he failed at making himself a star out of it.
You mean this
even
didn't
though
want to
maybe
make you want to see him like in all the things being like a matinee idol?
I was going to say, you know what?
For the world, probably not.
It made me want to see more movies and more performances out of him. But it did make me go, you're not doing the audition you think you're doing. In a really dark and interesting way, which is what made the movie, I think, work for me so well. Is I kind of went like, here's a guy here's a character and an actor who wants something so bad, and they're making all the wrong choices to like actually accomplish the thing or actually receive any sort of catharsis for doing it. You're just spiraling into this really like dark descent essentially, and it's crazy how like easy he falls into it and how natural he falls into it. And then immediately he's just like, well, I guess self-destruction, right? That's what else do you do after that? And he starts just doing like
rock and roll biopic.
The fact that it starts very simple too, where it is just like, one of the first signs he starts like picking up young fans that he's referring to as old enough, which is a bad thing right off the start. Not good.
Pretty bad.
And it's even like the kind of enabling of it too. Like the record label head is giving him warnings not to do that, but by no means is he, stopping it or anything like that.
Yeah,
He's just
sweet
like,
young things can cause you trouble is
that's the
bleak
point
way
of view.
that he says that.
Yeah. He's like, just don't get me in trouble, essentially.
He's hooking up with like an underage girl instead of reading the movie scripts that are coming his way.
Right.
And then you get like that beautiful crossfade pan of them like kissing in the pool and then going over into the city.
Oh, I love
and they're
that.
trying to craft a sort of wholesome, warm sort of publicity image out of him being like a weekend with Lonnie Price, but
it's
sexy.
And then they have like, when he does talk to the young girl, like they have James Landis has her perform in this very like hypnotized way, like so the power dynamic is completely unavoidable, which obviously it would be, but I just like that when she's on the phone call when they make the date, you can tell that she's in this almost like dream like place in her head where he is in full manipulation.
Well, Elvis picked up the phone to her, right? Like it's a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just so disgusting right off the bat, and it just keeps getting darker and darker and darker to the point eventually when we get to the major plot point with that girl, just bringing it back to how he thought this would be his like mainstream accessible movie star movie. It's just unfucking believable, honestly. We'll get to that.
Delusional, pure delusion.
Yeah. It's crazy, but there are some other details that are sprinkled throughout that aren't to do with his character and just more in like style and mood. Like when he is at that first party he holds, one, he says like really disgusting things like, I don't want any dogs there, and bring a bunch of booze. But then there's this one shot that there's these just random two party goers, and they're staring at each other with this like dead blank stare for a good 5 seconds. And then they just start making out, and it just feels so strange. Like it's like it's an artificial thing where we're at a party, we're supposed to be having a good time. Here it is, the sex and the booze, but everything just feels off, and it doesn't feel like people are really doing something that feels good to them. They're doing something that feels like they should because they're living that lifestyle or something along those lines.
It's once again, it feels unnatural. It feels alien, even though it's like you understand that this is what like LA starlet decadence is like supposed to look like.
Isn't this what you want? Yeah, like this is the lifestyle, exactly. But it comes off like they're zombies.
Yeah, and there's also like a little piece of it too that feels like it's like sort of making fun a bit of like the sort of what their idea of like mid-60s LA like hippy dippy kind of thing, people.
I love his entourage.
I love it.
I love his entourage.
Is amazing. It's just like there's very much a kind of like look at these hippie freaks type of piece of like the party goers as well. That I'm always all about that. Like sort of how
there was maybe honestly my favorite scene in the movie is when he's having like a full on breakdown, and we'll get to the specifics of why he's having this breakdown. And yes, but also that shot of him losing his mind and the entourage being behind the sliding door drenched in shadows in the background, where it's like he's literally having a party and they're like, does he even like want us here? Why did he invite us to have a party? Because he's like, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. That's supposed to make me feel less lonely in a situation like this, right? And I mean, that's what's interesting is that it's like clearly this guy has some horrible internal demons he's working through, and he's like, I'm doing all of the material ways that America has sold me that's how you achieve these things. This is how you become a happy person, and just like none of it makes him happy. And also he sees that even on the periphery, everyone who's involved in the industry, like no one is feeling like they all understand that this is a transactional, artificial relationship that they have with even the product that they make, and the way that the relationship he has with like the record producer's wife Vera, for example, where she's just like, I heard at one point like you were one of his star singers, and now you are, similar to the Christopher Plummer relationship, like now you're his his wife or his partner, his business partner in a way. And
they say she was very young too, especially when they started.
Yes,
so young. Oh my god, like she looks so young. It's crazy.
Yeah. So even an otherwise like friendly, like seemingly kind character, it is like, like this industry promotes like people just being hollow, selfish, and older men preying on young women. Like that's just what this whole industry is. He's like at least he's
Yeah.
like at least I'm just open about it, like that's all there is to it. Even and although we do get a like very important piece of his backstory when he goes to go see his ma and pa, and he finds out that his dad is like a chicken farmer, and he angrily confronts him for like making him work in the field for nothing, like I was worthless and I had to run away with nothing but the clothes on my back. And he comes home to literally just brag about his wealth, his nice suits, his movie deals.
Even
and
though we
father
know he's
just goes,
miserable
"Dude."
and not a human.
Yeah, he's
inside.
like, that shit means nothing because you have no heart or like no spirit essentially to speak of. You are still just like a dead monster inside, and I know what you still are, even if you're pretending you're not that thing. And it's like, that's like one of the worst things a father could probably say to a son.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't go well. It does not go well. Like immediately he just like the dad.
Cue the guerrilla shots of him drinking and driving through the Hollywood Hills, like existentially, which I will say the imagery is fucking sick. It actually reminded me of driving. I made a trip to LA just like 2 years ago, and there was a day where I just drove through the Hollywood Hills, and it was like it was exactly like that experience with minus the drinking.
Driving, it was fucking awesome. Let me tell you, can't wait to be back.
But dude, like riding the convertible just like through the fucking hills and everything, I was like, look at this guy go, which obviously comes back in the last shot of the movie too, very darkly.
And I gotta say too, the camera work in these, because in this it's great too. It's got a lot of like fast edits, and the camera's everywhere from the side of the car to the front hood to inside the car with him. And later on, there's another sequence with speeding and a car, and it's also fantastic. But I just wasn't expecting that kind of style mixed in with this. It honestly was very like almost an action film for a little while.
Well, because it's throwing back to such an older era of like teen delinquent movie in a way that, you're like, there's some very modern new Hollywood camera work being applied here. I mean, Vilmos Zsigmond obviously went on to become literally maybe one of the pioneering visual stylists of new Hollywood. Maybe not even one of, maybe the, like, it's like, incredible. It's crazy to see him doing it on like no money here though.
I think that like specifically with that cars driving scene in the middle of the movie that you're talking about, like it's crazy how much they are, the camera work and Vilmos is able to do with that, because like there's those point of view shots sort of from the car that like reminded me of, they only last like a couple seconds, but they reminded me a lot of, Frankenheimer's Grand Prix. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how am I seeing shots that like that obviously like there's a lot more going on in those other shots that are really innovative, but the fact that it even can recall something that, both hadn't been made yet and was, considered extremely innovative, at the time, it just, and, still is just really crazy for a film that is this cheaply made.
And no one
the amount that they're able, that no one's seen and what they're able to get out of it, like the
chaotic energy of being in his headspace of being like, just like, that conversation just absolutely annihilated like my psychic space. And now I am fucking rampaging through Hollywood. Like as a result, like he is like an unhinged, like a bullet just come out of a barrel is the vibe you get out of that imagery. It's perfect.
And the fact that like, it's a movie that sort of, you get the sense when it begins that it's like, oh, there's something going on. This is a bit more in depth with its character work than I maybe expect it's going to be. But like, I do feel like everything with the camera work and everything with the sort of the screenplay and all of it all articulates a lot about both who Lonnie is and with what you were saying before about like the sort of power dynamics and between him and the Betty character. Like there's a lot there where the film itself is very aware of all of that and acknowledges it as it's happening. It's not just this kind of like playing into that kind of just the exploitation piece of it. There is a real maturity and kind of like an understanding of kind of what it is we're watching and the story that they are telling, and all of the camera work that is going on in the film and the way that it's lit. It communicates all of that emptiness, all of that hollowness, really, really, really well. It's a really surprising movie, and even with seeing The Sadist and knowing that kind of what that film has going on, just there's something about this one that I think it catches you off guard at different intervals.
Well, yeah, because there's something to be said about a movie that's like written as like a well-constructed like thriller with tense situations and sort of suspense set pieces kind of built into it. It feels like those stylistic and sophisticated camera tricks do come up in this, but they come up in just such a targeted psychological fashion in this film, where it just like suddenly it'll move from being incredibly elegant and showing you sort of his lavish pool area, or and then it'll get into the sort of more lyrical nature of what's happening, or God, the use of mirrors and what it says about the fractured lives that these characters are living. And he'll do something just so professional and so elegant like that, and then he'll just throw in a vicious handheld or point of view, just like burst of camera work of energy that just is so connected to the real animalistic quality of this character that you are very uncomfortably being led into. Like, I think about that sequence when the climactic sequence with the Vera character, where they've been having this fight, back and forth the entire time about how he wants her to show him respect because he's a star, and he's the reason like you make 50% of his product, so that's why you have a nice house and clothes and all this. And she's just like, dude, my husband fucking made you a star. Like, that's what it and I do like that he tries to plead to her emotionally at one point too, where he's like, it's not my fault my big break came at the expense of Tommy, when you're going, dude, is that the place you want to go to?
We all saw what you did, boy.
And she just sees through him, which is what I think really pisses him off, is that like everyone else is being like, look at this like charming young man who we found to like be this thing, and she can see that there's just something, there's something inside of him that's not right. And she gets this great monologue where she's talking about his fat ego, and you fancy yourself a prima donna of the opposite sex because you drive teenage girls wild, but to a woman like me, you're a long way to being a man. You're a farm boy who can wiggle his hips. And he starts like he takes that as a challenge, where he's like trying to weaponize his animal magnetism kind of against her and seduce her the way that he seduced the kind of older woman earlier, because he's like, he gets the ugliest line. There's no difference between a woman and a girl, which I was like, brother.
New lows abound.
Jesus Christ, man. And then he does, through the sheer, aura of him, he gets her to kiss him, and that just like cruel laugh he does in her face when she realizes.
Oh my God!
I wanted her to stab him.
And then it's just this is when they start to fight, correct?
Yeah.
Grabs
and you get that horrible shot of him obviously pushing her to the bed, and he sexually assaults her. But you get that shot. I think that's maybe the worst like element of it, not the worst, like I think a really skillful shot, but a shot that just made my stomach churn is when they're both their faces I think are in the frame, and it's like a profile shot, and he pushes her and she flies out of frame, but she lands on the bed, and we can actually see her in the background of the scene in the mirror looking up at him like scared, and you just see him, you get almost like an out of focus shot because it's focused on the mirror of him just like being very angry and then slowly smirking. And then he walks towards her, and exactly what's happening, and she wakes up in the bed, and it turns up into this whole altercation where obviously she's so traumatized, she grabs his switchblade by the bed and tries to attack him on the stairs, which is done again in these really skillful shots of like his shadow being reflected on the walls and being like this really over looming frightening thing, and him pushing her down the stairs, which is done in this like spinning point of view shot of her perspective of like what's essentially like her neck breaking on the stairs. And I was like, he's going full like serial rapist, serial killer mode on all of the people in like essentially his agent's life, who has like just no idea that he's doing all of this, and he is essentially spiraling because of he's getting nothing out of this stardom that he's risen to. It's a horrifying sequence. Honestly, it's where it really does turn into a horror film. Yeah,
and it's kind of like in the first half of this movie, you do see him using his sadistic qualities to his advantage, and then this is when he just kind of breaks that threshold and things all go downhill for him. I think it kind of implies that it's like when he's intentionally doing these things and he's planned them out, he's very good at being this kind of sadistic person and for his own gain. But now he's drunk, he's losing control. His father just told him that he's a complete failure and has nothing. This woman says that he's just a little boy when he's clearly trying to, prove these insecurities and become a man that his father would be proud of. And now she's taking that, false idea of himself away from him.
Yeah, he just spirals. Like he really does just go like absolutely like and I like that the camera work follows him in that spiral that he's going on in this.
Yeah. And so now that things are less intentional, it just becomes like these accidents, and he's digging himself into a deeper hole essentially. It's honestly satisfying to see, which is interesting. A lot of this time when you see the downfall, you're kind of like, oh, here it comes. He's in over his head. But it's satisfying to watch this character go through it. It feels strange in a way to just watch the second half of a film be complete. The self-destruction becoming realized, essentially.
Yeah, I think it's like
and also how many people he's harming in like the sort of collateral damage wise while experiencing that, right?
Yeah.
Like it's one thing to go through it. It's another horrible thing to take all these people with you. And that's one element of like, because this is when like the teen girl comes back into the story, right? Like she gets
snowball essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like it's sort of the second half is kind of him realizing like, oh, I'm stuck with myself. Like, it's real. I mean, it's brutal. Like, people are still telling him what he is, and these are the very things that he's like trying to get away from. And he's sort of being like, I am this. Can't you see that I'm this? And people are just like, no, like you're still this. You're this. And he's just realizing like, fuck, that didn't change me. This is who I am. And like, it's not just like that I'm from these quote unquote like meager, origins. It's not that just I'm like a farm boy. It's like I myself as a person, I hate myself. Like, and
I'm literally a bad person.
I'm a horrible person. I hate myself, and being famous and becoming this powerful quote unquote, person that people adore didn't make me not hate myself.
He was like, if anything, it's kind of annoying. I got obligations. I got shit to deal with.
I have to read this script. You're telling me I have to read this script? And
I gotta wake up and go to the booth in the morning? What the fuck?
And it's crazy because you're just like everything that the dad says, where it's just like you just don't understand like working, like what work is. And it's like everything is being handed to this guy, and he still can't be bothered to like do anything that involves his obligations. And it's like, you're living the life. Like, how? And it's like, this guy is just so miserable, like in himself and with who he is, that it's nothing. And then it's like at the point where, obviously Betty and what happens with her and that beautiful, like, sort of nightmare sequence that is when you kind of realize what has happened to her.
And also that scene where she...
Oh my
God. Well, and when she first appears again in his life too, and it like interrupts that, again, another mirror shot of her here appearing in the corner of his like dressing room. And that was one of my favorite ones, because it was one of those things where like you could tell that he was like, I'm having these annoyances pop up, like, like this woman confronting me and I have to kill her. That fucking sucks, And then here's this thing where, he thinks that he's evaded it. He's like, okay, I can go back to the fun stuff now. I get to like make out with like a beautiful actress, and the director's going to say I'm really good at doing that because I'm a pretty boy, and like that's it. And so when he goes back to have a makeout session in his dressing room, and he thinks that that's the scene he's going to have, and she's just sitting there in the corner, and he's freaked out about how she got in there. And then she relates to him, like I'm pregnant, and he immediately is like, well, how do you know it's even mine? And she's just like, you're the only person that I've you're the only person that like I've had sex with,
and I'm the only person I've done it with. You fucking idiot!
And his first thought is to take her to the sketchiest abortionist I've ever seen, and like a back alley vet clinic or something, or at a zoo. I was like, nuts. I don't know where they are.
What is happening?
Oh, it's nuts too, because they have her like slowly walk through to the back of it, and all it is just cages of animals yelling at her essentially, and it just creates such a nightmarish atmosphere. And that obviously with all the animals, it's implied that they don't do this to human beings very often. So it's just absolutely
and the way
disgusting.
How mean that nurse is to her too, or whatever the fuck she is, where she's just like, take off your clothes, and she's like, do I have to take off all my clothes? And you're just like, you're bashful now, but not when you were doing the deed, huh? Jesus,
just pure shame as she's going through this.
Like, of
already
course, this girl
traumatizing thing.
fucking freaks out and cries and runs away, and which he gets around by promising to marry her and make her Mrs. Price, which is done in this like very beautiful scene where they're like running on, you know, sort of like seaside beach right next to his mansion. And it was actually such a nice moment that I went, oh, this movie's lying to me. Fuck you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's not,
I'm like,
that is not, he didn't just
yeah.
decide to marry this girl to get away from that. He wasn't going to accept that she didn't want to get an abortion.
Yeah.
But I love the way that the movie saves it for you, because it cuts away from that scene. It comes back to the like record producer coming into his house and talking to him and wondering why he's like acting so weird and feeling like he's so distant, and like what had he seen, because I was just at the beach and just got back. And when he tries to go to sleep that night, that's where the nightmare sequence I think you were referring to, Katie, comes back, where her corpse is just like floating into his mind. And oh god, it's a really
haunting.
horrifying sequence.
Yeah. And like you hear her voice and it's like echoing and like, oh my god. It's and
Mrs. Price.
Mrs. Price, and you see her under the water, and it's so upsetting and really beautifully. It's just like a really beautiful scene, but it's also the most upsetting. Like when you're realizing that, oh, he's not dreaming about, like, this is what he just did like an hour ago.
Yeah, he just strangled her to death and drowned her in the ocean right next to his mansion.
And it's so impactful that he's seeing visions even when he's awake. I thought that was awesome. And she's like floating.
And also feeling guilt, because you were like, dude, he did not feel guilt over lighting that dude on fire.
Right.
But this clearly was like, there was something maybe a little bit more personal about.
Yeah, killing a pregnant teenager is
maybe the final, maybe the one that, gets him to fucking feel something.
Breaks the camel's back.
Have I gone too far? Let's take a poll.
Pull this one, Hollywood. There's a really cool effect that they do with the audio that is signifying like he's kind of drowning out what she's saying to him, where she's like, "Do you love me, Lonnie?" And he's like, "I told you I did." And like that's just how he says "I love you," because he's such an asshole. But while she's talking, her voice gets more faded into the background and becomes increasingly reverbed, and it's just like him completely blocking her out and losing all sight of like her as a person. And I think it's directly before the whole dream sequence in which he kills her and everything. So the way that this is all set up is honestly amazing. I think it's an incredible use of different styles and camera work and stuff. Like he has it is Landis doing this, but just I guess Hayden, I would imagine, had some type of collaboration with some of these ideas and how to present them. So it is genuinely impressive.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that whole sequence where it starts with that great shot of him drinking next to the phone and that swinging like headlamp like above him, and he's like, I can't go to sleep. I don't know what to do. What does a guy do in my situation? Well, he throws a fucking party.
Damn straight. Get those bongos going,
but everyone shows up and he's outside, and they're like, clearly he doesn't want to put on a party. And I think at one point a character literally says, did he put on a party like specifically so that he can like not talk to anybody? Like, is that what he did? It was exactly what he did.
That's a power move, man.
It's like, and they're all just kind of like, wait, you called us like in the middle of the like we're here. What's going on? And then he's just like angrily, playing the bongos. It's like, oh, he's not okay.
Yeah, it's either like,
what a crazy moment of acting too, shirtlessly ripping the bongo as sadly as someone could.
Passionate bongo player though. He was hitting
punches the wall, screams for them all to get out as they're all watching from the inside, all shadowy. And he's like he had a crazy last night where he murdered someone and felt obviously horrible for doing that, and then which is wild because he's murdered multiple people at this point. He didn't seem to feel that,
or at
bad
least
about
attempted
it.
murder.
Maybe the accumulation, the accumulation of sins has started to affect his mental state.
Yes,
and also he's so hungover that the next morning when he goes to his demo recording, that's where he has his full breakdown. And it's funny too, I didn't realize these movies were connected by breakdowns during the recordings,
during sessions. Been there.
Yeah,
been there.
And it's so funny too because he's reading the lyrics from like a different songwriter, and they just sound so close to what he's actually going through that it freaks him out. He's like, music is too expressive. Yeah. So what the fuck is happening?
The paranoia. He's like, how do these people know what's going on? Like, it's just full on paranoia mode.
Who wrote these? They were like, dude, it's the same guy who wrote the last song. Like, what are you talking about?
This is kind of where I was expecting it to do the whole like the industry is also evil thing that it doesn't do, where because he starts to do that thing where he's like, the label head figures it out from looking at the newspaper that reports the girl missing or drowned, and then he's just like, oh my god, I tried
he's
to
like, wait,
tell
you were at the beach last night.
Yeah. And but he's like, nobody knows nothing, man, it's fine, I was with you last night, remember? And I thought that was gonna be the moment where he goes like, okay, we can cover this up.
Yeah.
But instead they're just like, nope, you're on your own, buddy. Just leaves him to have his like mental breakdown essentially. And it's completely
I do find it
too.
Curious though that he just leaves. There's no like, I'm calling the cops, dude.
Yes. It's definitely implying that he's still like, I just don't want to be a part of it. It's on you now. Which is, disgusting for sure. I was just expecting him to like be like, well, you're my star, so I'm going to take care of you. But it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Instead, he like pathetically trips over a bunch of instruments and begs him to keep his position, and then commits the one of the craziest fucking suicides I've seen. It's
another.
That's the coolest. That's one of the coolest suicides, I think, though.
It's pretty great.
Trains are awesome.
Trains are awesome. What a way to go out. I mean,
And again, I was kind of saving it for this moment, but the camera work that we were talking about in his initial speeding and drinking montage is awesome. And it's even better this time. Like they have a shot where he's actually like the camera's on the side of the car, and you can see him speeding and keeping the same speed as the train that's beside them and everything. It like reminded me of I guess it's not quite the same because that's a top to bottom, but it's the French Connection where the car is like speeding along the train at the same time. So it was just cool to see something like that in such a low budget and a movie that nobody's seen again. So yeah, it was wild. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's a amazing sequence of him once again going straight from being like, please help me, Paul. He's like begging on the floor. He's like, completely. I didn't want to kill her, man. Like, I didn't mean it. And, and the guy is just like, he just completely abandons him. And I think that's the key to the sequence, is that it just leaves him completely alone in the studio. And once again, he's just been, entirely, he's like, everything that I've done has resulted in, that's the lyric he gets too. Now that you've gone, it's a lonely world. And even when there's people around, it's still a lonely world. And, he's just totally trapped with himself. He fucking, that's where that self-loathing comes in. Like, what is it if you can achieve all of these, sort of artificial material things, and it's like, you're just still just a completely ugly, empty person. And he's like, wow, nothing is going to fix this. So I am going to drive my convertible as fast as I possibly can next to a train, wait for me to pass the train so that I can peel onto the track and have it just nail me so that we connect at like the fastest point for both of us. And just that's how he commits suicide. And I love that they obviously didn't have the money to show that, but they choose such an elegant way of showing it, which is the shot that cuts away to a bunch of people listening to his hit single on the jukebox. And all of a sudden they just hear the explosion off screen. And as his single plays, they all like start running towards it. And it obviously echoes the fact that he was listening to the song after he killed Tommy Loomis, and the way that everyone's going to view him as like, like a tragic, young heartthrob who, died young kind of deal. But we also know that it was like such an actually ugly, kind of deserving journey to get to that point.
That he put himself in very like purposefully and like almost artificially, just kind of in the sense that, he calculated Tommy's death, or at least his demise, his scarred face, and everything else. So
he hustled his way there.
Yeah, exactly.
And also took as many bodies down with him as he could, practically.
Right. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Man, what a movie.
To bring up, I guess I'm always finding ways to bring up Phantom of the Paradise, but like, it's sort of like he becomes like the, We Remember You Forever, Eddie, sort of person at that song at the beginning where it's just like you died young and you're, it's this idol, to gone too soon. You were only famous for like a handful of months, and he's probably going to end up being this sort of beloved figure. But it's also, again, with these two films, like both end in explosions, both end in either suicide attempts or actual, like completed suicides. It's
breakdowns in the recording sesh. Absolutely.
The breakdowns in the recording session. Yeah, there's a lot of similar, such different films, but a lot of similar trajectories in terms of those big kind of, plot points that they sort of are building towards. And it's really, at the point where he sort of realizes that he just sort of isn't able to continue because this is not a sustainable situation.
No.
It's this, to put it mildly. I mean, it's just so exhausting. But it is one of those things where you're like, oh fuck, thank God, man. Like it's like you made the right call because like this guy is he's so toxic. He's so destructive to everyone around him, and again, all in such a short period of time. And I also,
Jamie had no qualms with this one ending on a suicide. He was like, give me that shit.
It's the very
also trains rule. So.
Yeah. Very trains rule. Yeah, it's very, very, very rare occasion where you're just like the relief of like, oh my God, this like guy is gonna stop just bringing everyone around him down. These lives that have been ruined.
And what's funnier is that it's an 80-minute bullet of a movie too.
It moves so quick and it makes those.
But it's so icky. You're like, God damn, get me out of here.
It's so
80
gross
minutes of disgusting acts, essentially.
It is, and you're just like, oh my God, the amount of damage this guy's able to do in such a short period of time, and like with all of these different characters that we get to know. I know, and like also like I mean, going back to like the scene in the recording studio, I love like that shot of him like lying on the ground after Paul leaves. He's got his hand out, sort of stretched out. He's like on the floor with his hand stretched out, and like that's the same sort of motion that he makes when he's sitting at the telephone. After like the night of him sort of murdering Betty, and also his sort of arm and hand are stretched out, and I love that sort of that. There's a yearning in him that just there's nothing to fill it. There's nothing to satisfy it. He doesn't even know what he's reaching out for, but he's not going to find it in this life for sure. And it's just I fucking love this movie.
It's awesome. I agree.
Yeah, me too. If we're maybe pivoting towards reductive rating round on this one, this was a solid 4 for me. I was like pretty blown away by this one start to finish. Yeah. I think the fact that it had a bullet trajectory to it, that it was so elegantly shot by Vilmos Sigmund was like an easy entry point. But I am also just naturally drawn to I think a miserable drifter hustler kind of story dynamic, especially when it's so lyrically shot and so psychologically engaged as one like this one is. And yeah, when it has the hard edges of a B exploitation movie, that we are going to go to the places that a James Dean or a Warren Beatty or a Marlon Brando might be not want to play this role, and probably justfully so, because they're like it makes me look frightening and depressed and cold and off-putting, and like why would it's not like it's despite the fact that it is a leading man role, and I think that he does a good job at it. It's not a commercial decision. It's not a commercial instinct being made. It actually is an artistic one. It is clearly someone felt really passionately about, I want this thing so bad, but it fucking makes me miserable, and even though I'm trying to do it. And that's what I think the central contradiction that you get watching the movie and watching this performance by Hayden is, that you really do feel that. And I did feel like demons were coming out in this movie, and it helps when those demons are also then vividly realized by really talented filmmakers who can actually convey that and articulate that. And so that was why this one really, really stood out to me. I also just think that I've not seen anyone else try to do like a rags to riches, like rock star melodrama and a dirty like teen delinquency, like rebel movie like this, but then remind me more of like serial killer movies or like B-noirs, but like specifically the really harrowing B-noirs. Like I was thinking like the Hitman movies, or like the ones of like con men who fucking ruin everything around them and poison everything around them. Like those are the kinds of noirs I was thinking about. And yeah, like all of that combined, I just thought was, really, really fantastic. And yeah, I think that how existential and psychological this got was quite surprising to me. Like, I wasn't expecting the ghostly nightmare sequences. I wasn't expecting like the high speed, like guerrilla style shot drinking and driving around Hollywood. I wasn't expecting, you know, how shocking this was going to get and how casual and unflinching he was in terms of the extremity of his misogyny and violence that he would eventually deploy. Like the fact that, you know, he's, you know, sexually manipulating and robbing old women. That's the first thing you see this guy do in 10 minutes. The second thing you see him do is light a guy on fire for being just a heartthrob, seemingly a warm teen star that he wishes he was. Then, you know, having sex with an underage girl and forcing her into getting a back alley abortion and strangling her to death when she won't. Like, it's like, these were just things I didn't expect this to go to the vile places that it does. And I think it does so effectively. And it does so in a way where the rawness and despair of the character portrait isn't like overwhelmed. I think there's such a way, like, obviously this is one of the most rancid, hateable characters you can possibly have in a movie, in terms of the things that he does. And I was actually surprised at how I still felt like I was kind of welcomed into his psychological perspective in a way that did feel like when his dad puts him down, and when he eventually does go like completely unhinged and he kills himself, and you're like, yeah, do you know what, dude? Sure. Yeah, your life didn't, you know, despite the fact that on a purely material status-driven dream level, your life seemed great. Being in your head seemed like the worst possible thing in the world for you and everyone around you.
Us.
Yes.
And us. So, you know, and I think there's something pretty crazy effective about how the filmmaking conveys all of that. And also, last thing I'll mention, the folk rock songs are awesome. Yeah, and I wish that they were just like on Spotify, or I could just like get a record of them or something, because they are actually just pretty sick songs. And I would recommend checking the movie just to hear these pretty cool songs. And it's crazy that thanks for showing this to us, Katie, but it's crazy that this was lost for 50 years as well. Like, this is so underseen and so underrated as a result. 200 people have logged this on Letterboxd, and it's you know, I think that this should be probably as seen as some of the, you know, movies, the B-noirs that we were bringing up, or even something like A Bucket of Blood, or some of the things we were mentioning from this era. Totally. So very solid 4 for me.
Yeah. Totally agree. I think it's a 4-star as well. I really loved this. It was interesting to, like, we already seeing the sadist, and then it's just, this is kind of like the sadist 2 in a sense. It's kind of like we take one of the sadistic characters and we're like, now he's got a dream of being a rock star. Go, let's see what happens. But yeah, it's I think Hayden's honesty about his inner struggles through this character is very interesting. Obviously, I don't think he was like a super sadistic psychopath, but I think like he was probably afraid of his success with maybe a mindset that he had. And even though he wanted it bad, I agree with you, Josh, it does seem like it was just making him miserable. I mean, making it in the entertainment industry is an absolute fucking nightmare. So I, you know, totally get it. But I do really appreciate that honesty that seems to be within this character, and to make this, you're like, this is going to be my breaking star moment, and make this ugly of a character be that is just, I love that. I'm genuinely impressed.
He was
that.
Accidentally too honest and truthful about what was inside of him.
You weren't supposed to make us that uncomfortable. It was like,
yeah, exactly.
That's not what movie stars did, man. Didn't you see the whole thing where they were manufacturing like a charming, warm image? You know, that's part of the deal.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the thing has incredible control, and it's got bullet pacing. Like, Landis is just unbelievable at making this feel just like kind of very similar to the character, just a complete destructive bullet going through each scene, causing havoc, and then just leaving the chaos behind. It's really, really great. And again, for such a low budget movie, some amazing effects and style. Like, we already talked about the 2 car sequences, but I loved that nightmare sequence with all the fades, and you're not quite sure what's real and what isn't until you are very aware. And I think this is great. This is such a hidden gem. It's unreal. So everybody go check it out. It's on Tubi, so you can watch it. Go check it out.
That's right.
Yeah, I think this is sort of a high 4 for me. It was, watching a bunch of films from 1965, this was one where I was just like, oh my God, thank God they found this movie, because I am so grateful that like it's something people can see now. And I think part of even why I chose it was I was just, I just want more people to watch it. Anything that I can do to get people to check out Rat Fink is like, just something that I want to sort of be talking about, because it's one of those films that, I think everything that the both of you said is like way more articulate than I could ever put it. It just is so, it moves along at such a clip. There is such an interesting conversation happening between its actual star and the character he's playing and what he's trying to accomplish with this production. There's so much mileage that it gets out of the filmmaking and out of the craftsmen involved. There's just everything about like you said, Josh, drifter characters. Give me a drifter character. Miserable drifter characters, even better. Like, I'm all about it. That is what I want. It just checks off so many boxes in that way. And it's that, again, that strange combination of stuff with sort of genre fare going on in American filmmaking in like the 50s and throughout the 60s. That is just sort of a mode and a combination of tones that I'm and things that are being tried out and subject matter that's kind of being broached, and like just all of those sort of transgressive inclinations, all of that stuff is the stuff that I'm super, super, super drawn to, at the very least, to check out. And then I end up loving a lot of those, but this one really just very, very sweet spot of being all of the things in subject matter that I tend to be drawn towards, and types of characters that I tend to be drawn towards, maybe in part because I'm repelled by them, and also just the filmmaking itself just really, and again with Hayden, just it really, really elevates this into something that feels a lot more considered, a lot more propulsive, I guess, and surprising, just really consistently surprising in both ways, where you're like, Jesus Christ, can this movie get any meaner? And also where you're just like, God, that was gorgeous. And, oh, that was really interesting, that choice. How are they able to do that? Like, this movie was really kind of dirt cheap for them to make. And so there's so much of that going on too. And I find it so satisfying in so many ways.
Yeah. And again, Hayden did also write I think the first song that you hear when it's about riding the rails. And he was a great singer and apparently a really good songwriter, because I thought that song was awesome. So a lot of talent.
Well, I think that is going to wrap it up for Rat Fink and for this week's episode. That was, once again, Inside Daisy Clover from 1965 and Rat Fink from 1965. Thanks so much, Katie, for bringing these films with you and showing them to us. If you've got anything to plug while you're here, this is where we usually have you do that. Where can people buy the zine? Because you wrote about both these movies in the 1965 zine. So I'm assuming if people liked this episode, there are more films from 1965 they can see you write about and discover.
Yeah. So I just came out with a new zine about maybe 2 months ago that was about the films of 1930. And I've done that year. I've done 1982.
How many movies do you watch for this again? I feel like it was a lot. How many do you usually watch?
I tend to,
because it's a really cool project for people who don't know. Like it's like you really do embed yourself in an entire year of movies and then do a zine about them and find like some of the most underrated and underseen ones sometimes.
Yeah,
so
I try to make it about kind of like the journey of it, and more about like I sort of called it like the sort of top 10 by year, but it's really more about the collective experience and just sort of then trying to write about some of my favorites. Like, and in 1965 there were just so many films that I loved that it's like, no, I write about 30 films in there because there's too many to choose from. But it's I probably watch about, the watch list would grow and grow, and of course it's always just like a very small fraction of anything that's out there, but like 150 I would say is kind of where I was at my most, and it would be over a very long period of time because like I've got other interests and stuff I want to do, so it's just like it's really hard to, like, you're trying to kind of embed yourself in it as much as you can.
It's such a cool project, though. I would love to do that. Like, I've seen 20 films from 1965, so I would love to even just see like 50 and make it like a project.
1965 is such an awesome year because of the stuff like Rat Fink and Inside. You're like both of these movies that we talked about today. All of the kind of weird tensions and the sort of dissonance happening and the experimentation and all of that. It's coming out in obviously films around the world, but the stuff going on in American filmmaking at that time, as they're kind of in crisis mode, as like films like Cleopatra are bankrupting like studios basically. It's there's so much cool stuff happening in that era, just like the mid 60s in particular. I just love it so much. But my on my Etsy page, which is called Femina Writings, that's where all of my writing and essays and collage work, and they sort of try to sort of function as like a personal scrapbook of my time watching these movies and the commonalities and the conversations that I feel like are occurring between them unintentionally.
Awesome.
Hell yeah. Well, I need to say, if you liked the hearing about these movies, you will very much like those zines. So go and check them out. For our listeners, we are going to be back in 1 week's time, where we are going to be doing an episode. We're going to be doing Invasion of the Body Snatchers ×2.
Yeah.
Because the Don Siegel 1950s version just became available on 4K from Kino Lorber, which felt like a great time to revisit that, because talk about bullet pacing, and just being like, pure black and white, sort of like image tension. I really love that film specifically for that reason. And also, Donald Sutherland recently passed away, a Canadian legend. So we kind of felt like we could kill two birds with one stone here, and we could talk about the 1970s version by Philip Kaufman as well, and talk about Donald Sutherland and his obviously iconic point and scream that he gets to do in that film. I felt like we wanted to do. So that's what we're going to be doing over on the Patreon next week, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. Once again, for anyone who's interested. And then in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be back with a special guest, where we are going to be finally talking about a surprising one in the Josh and Jamie. Actually, this might just be the Josh personal canon. I don't remember what Jamie rated this one, because we watched it as a group watch one, and we all had the best time ever. I might have been the only person who was like, no, that's actually a great movie. We're going to be talking about Miami Connection.
Oh, hell yeah. This is one I wanted to rewatch because of... Like, I mean, I enjoyed myself, but yeah, I think I gave it the 3 the last time. So I'm hoping I'm just going to get nice and baked. And
well, I recently rewatched it with a live cover band doing all the songs in a sold out theater of people losing. And I was like, I was almost ready to. Yeah. I was like, this is one of my favorite movies to just soak in. I love no budget passion, like on display there. I love the fight choreography. I like that it's like a half remembered Miami Vice episode for certain scenes for some reason. There's so much to love about that movie, and we're going to be pairing it with one I've not seen, but I have a feeling is going to be similarly sort of trashy action. A movie called The Stabilizer. Oh, cool. Which I have been assured is an absolutely insane and ridiculous movie.
Love that.
I mean, it's being paired with Miami Connection, so I feel like I understand the vibe. So that's what we're going to be doing in 2 weeks' time. We're going trashy 80s action mode. So we're switching the vibes up from harrowing 1960s melodramas with a little bit of a dark edge. But yeah, that's what you guys can expect from us over on the main feed in 2 weeks. Once again, thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.